looking for as far as the inspection, that we had voted that in. I believe that was back in December to and that is in here as an exhibit. So other than that, I have no other discussion.
Do you have any discussion on the exemption to looking for oversight? Yeah, and that's all been added.
We had already voted that in.
Yeah.
That's what we voted in.
Mr. Chair, to our emails again recently.
What was it? The motion is to accept as printed?
As printed?
Yeah.
Yes, on mobile contract. Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, passes.
Yes. This is a historic moment. For 10 years, you've been working on this agreement. You now have a $30 million deal for $22 million worth of water infrastructure. They will be giving you $100,000 a year to reimburse you for your costs of overseeing the project, as well as part of the $8 million provides $250,000 towards a water superintendent. As you know, and I'm just saying this more for the people who might be at home, just to know some of the things that are in this. We will be using the DEP's exhibits that they're using in the consent agreement, which they have put in all of the properties that are contaminated and all the properties that are not contaminated. And Exxon has agreed to hook up all of those properties.
Okay.
So I think those are the main tenets. If anyone at home is interested in actually reading this lengthy document, please contact me and I can get you a copy.
My comment status of decommissioning the wells for people who did not have contamination.
If they want to be hooked up, they're going to need to decommission their wells. And so that is kind of a quid pro quo of Exxon hooking them up. So if they don't want Exxon to hook them up, they can keep their well and use that and hook up at a later time. We did put in here that they acknowledge that the schools may want to keep their wells for irrigation. It's cost prohibitive to be using and paying Southbridge rates to be able to water the lawn, so they will work with DEP, and if they determine that there's no risk, they will allow the schools to keep their wells for irrigation.
And that's through the DEP.
And that will be worked at DEP, but this does have it in as Exxon's discretion, which should be fair, because if we're pulling a plume, we don't want to be doing that, and they certainly don't want to increase their liability.
Good evening and welcome to our January 24th Board of Selectmen Water Sewer Workshop. I ask we please all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Flag to found there. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Ms. McKenzie, your meeting is also currently open for us. Yes. Awesome. We'll first go through some new business for our 2018 budget calendar, then we'll move into our regularly scheduled workshop. Ms. Graber?
You have in your packet a calendar. You were supposed to open the meeting tonight, the annual town meeting warrant tonight. So we're looking for you to approve that. I've already sent it out to the departments, letting them know that we will discuss it tonight.
Thank you. And we were supposed to take this on at our last meeting, but due to quorum restraints that we were not able to have that. So we're looking to approve the calendar as presented and also to open the warrant.
Okay, through the chair.
Mr. McGrath?
I made the motion that we approve the calendars presented by the town administrator for the annual budget and the warrant.
Thank you. Second. The motion is second to approve the calendar. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll move to a vote. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, motion passes. And now for opening the warrant. Mr. Singer?
To open a warrant.
Thank you. We have a motion to open the warrant. And a second. Any discussion? Can't believe it's already that time again, but it's budget season. So seeing no discussion, we'll move to a vote. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Chair votes aye, motion passes.
And just for those at home, that means we'll be posting the warrant by April 27th. The election is on Saturday, May 6th, and the annual town meeting will be Monday, May 15th.
It'll be here before you know it. Thank you, Ms. Kramer. And now, before we get into the workshop, I just want to have a chance to everyone, we'll go around the room and introduce ourselves, and some faces not everyone may know. So I'll start off, Joe Safro, Chairman of the Board of Selectmen, and we'll go this way, and we'll work our way around the room.
Gabriel Berghume with the Water and Sewer Commission.
Robert Lemansky,
That's for last.
Charlton Water and Sewer Commission.
Alex McKenzie, Charlton Water and Sewer.
Paul Gardner, Water and Sewer Commission.
And we'll go this way.
Christian Bousquet, Charlton resident.
Melissa Whiting, Charlton resident.
Mark Whiting, Charlton resident.
John Jordan, Charlton resident.
Cynthia Weldon, Charlton resident.
Kevin Weldon, Charlton resident.
Kevin Pecos, your Water Sewer Commission consultant up to the 31st.
Bob Mackey with Beta Group.
Kendra White with Beta Group.
John McGrath, Charlton Board of Selectmen.
Robin Craver, Town Administrator.
David Singer, Selectman.
Thank you very much. And I will turn it over to Ms. Craver, who has prepared a memo to set the meeting. So Ms. Craver, please take it away.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, as you know, the board was scheduled to meet with the Water Sewer Commission in a workshop last week, but I was sick and both of the chairs thought it best to wait until my return. Tonight, building on an excellent working relationship that both boards have developed, you have several issues to discuss tonight. Some issues must be discussed in open session as they do not qualify for executive session, and some issues regarding some issues could be held in executive session. The executive session portions include any litigation action against Southbridge. All else, I believe, will not qualify and should be discussed in open session. Let me begin by saying that, in my opinion, the Water Sewer Department is going to be one of the most active and community-shaping departments in town over the next 5 years. The decisions that are made in relation to water and expanded sewer will affect the town's future finances, economic development, environment, and residential build-out. Decisions will be made relative to the new infrastructure that will last for decades. Decisions will be made that determines Charlton's level of water independence, namely whether the town pursues a consecutive water system where we run the operations ourselves, or whether Charlton continues to purchase water from outside the community or finds its own water source. Decisions will be made on how to assess new sewer capacity as new water infrastructure is developed. Charlton will soon receive a check for $8 million, and out of that, Charlton has agreed to reimburse residents for their betterments, pay off existing debt, find a new water superintendent, and provide roughly $1.5 million to the Water Sewer Department for capital planning and one-time operational assistance. In the past few, and by the way, we've just signed that contract tonight. So,
I'm happy.
The past few months, the Water Sewer Department hired Kevin Pecos as the interim water controller, and his contract ended December 31st, 2016. He has been on vacation and returned last week. It's my understanding the Water Sewer Commission held off extending the contract at their last meeting. Given that both boards discussed his hiring, it is on tonight's agenda, and you have in your packets a report of pending issues facing the Water Department. Those include, on the water side, general operating efficiencies, including billing, operating policies and procedures within the office, sufficient backup, and the highest and best use of staff. A sewer rate study. There are no sewer regulations, and they should be developed within the present Charlton bylaws and state regulations. Issues regarding capacity. There's concern that we might have oversold capacity due to obligations owed to residents who have already paid sewer betterments. The sewer plant operator is responsible for emergency responses related to a couple of failures where the sewage overflow leaked, indicating growth. The town needs to review any pending capital investments that could improve capacity. Regarding building issues, as you are aware, Mary has been working on rebuilding the sewer building system, as there were many deficiencies and inaccuracies were found. You can read those deficiencies in Mr. Pecos's report. Meter review and replacement program. Municipalities are required to review and/or replace water meters, which is what we use to calculate sewer usage, at a prescribed interval, usually 10 years. On the water side, we need to look at oversight and management of water issues, and make a decision on how the Water Sewer Commission intends to move forward. Funding, it's time to do the FY18 budget and take a look at the FY17 budget to make sure you have enough funding to make it to the end of the year. Grants, presently there are 4 separate grants and bond bills approved for Charlton that we're administering. And there are considerations on staff, consultants, and legal costs. Decisions need to be made around those. Regarding Exxon, we will hopefully in the spring begin the construction of the school loop. And decisions need to be made on project oversight, review design, engineering services. ExxonMobil sent the documents in early December and are waiting for comments from Charlton. Land purchase for the pump station at Route 169, and this is an important piece as we talk about the Casella. Inspection, whether we're using a clerk of the works, engineer, staff, or a combination thereof. And the final agreement documents between the town of Charlton and ExxonMobil, and as I said, we've just signed those, executed them tonight. And I will be sending them to ExxonMobil tomorrow. Regarding the town of Southbridge and water, we have an IMA dispute, as you know. Mediation failed. The next step would be for Charlton to submit the dispute to the court. As you know, the issues in dispute are 1, over the meeting of retained earnings, what percentage does Charlton receive? And 2, whether Millennium Power was intended to be counted towards Charlton's percentage calculation for retained earnings. This would qualify it for a discussion executive session if you believed you were going to move forward with the litigation. Also under Town of Southbridge is the consecutive water system and that conversation and discussion. Charlton has already given notice to Town of Southbridge that it plans to become a consecutive water department pending a favorable rate. The IMA required a 1-year notice. The Water Master Plan, funded through a grant, will answer many questions and provide the basis to negotiate a fair water price from the Town of Southbridge. Charlton must negotiate with the Town of Southbridge to get a wholesale rate. Charlton running the system will save the Town of Southbridge repair, maintenance, and capital costs while it can sell water. Work with DEP to become a public water source. Permitting. The master plan will also provide DEP confidence that Charlton is really ready and able to take on the responsibilities of a water department. Remember, public water is a huge commitment and should not be entered into lightly. You must know we can provide safe, consistent, clean water to our residents. DEP will hold Charlton to a high standard, and we must demonstrate that we are ready. And create a water department with policies and procedures. Regarding a future water supply, some of the tasks that were identified were negotiations with the Town of Southbridge, as I've just described above. Water negotiations with Aquarian Water Company in the Town of Oxford for water for the east side of Route 20. As you know, there's salt contamination that must be abated. And to search for viable Charlton wells to serve portions of the town and possibly supplement portions of the new system. Town of Southbridge has already made it clear that they will not expand water supply past the school loop, leaving a large portion of the town without public water. Lastly, Casella. The public water to residents who live by the Southbridge landfill, whose wells are contaminated with 1,4-dioxane, is a priority. DEP has named the landfill as the potential source. We need to review the waterline design. Charlton should have a process in place. And we need to work with the Board of Health as they've been very active in this project and issue. I put together a matrix of these for going forward so the board and commission can have a playbook, so to speak, to determine how you envision the tasks being done and who has what role. This will provide direction to the water sewer staff, the consultants, and myself. You also have in your packet, let's see, so you have this memo that I gave you, you have the water matrix, and then there's a thicker packet here. In that thick packet, you have the pending projects list from Mr. Pecos, which was dated December 19th. You have a water master plan outline, which was emailed earlier to you from Beta, which was delivered January 19th. There's an email from Joe Speedwack. He sent this in today, just so that you would know what his priorities are. And he was not able to be here tonight. And then you have two correspondents from Kleinfelder. One was written in December 6th, and it was telling us that 90% water main design review. We are at 90%, and they are asking us to provide comments. Comments were not given to them, and then there's a follow-up email asking about the design comments again in January. And lastly, you have from Chris McClure an ethics opinion regarding his participation in the water. I know that there's been questions about his participation in looking at the design as well as being able to represent clients who are hooking up to the water system. So that's what you all have in the packets. My recommendation would be to go through the matrix. I have to say that a lot of the work that we've been trying to pull together, myself and Mr. Pecos, we've been really working towards putting together work product for you based on becoming a consecutive water system. We've negotiated with DEP for the use of the grant monies based on your vote and our assumption that you wanted to become a consecutive water system. I attended the Water Sewer Commission last night, and through a conversation, I was told that maybe you may be re-looking at that, so I think that that's going to be an important discussion tonight and a decision on whether or not, and for those who are watching that isn't familiar with the larger conversation that has been going on, when Exxon starts to put the water line in, Southbridge will be able to reap the $2,000 tie-in and all of that. So there's a lot of money that's on the table depending on whether or not Charlton becomes its own consecutive water system and oversees that project versus having the town of Southbridge oversee it, because 75% of those fees will go to Southbridge. My understanding, and let me know if I'm incorrect, one of the concerns and discussions at the Water Sewer Commission has been that possibly waiting and letting Southbridge put that water line in and work out the kinks may be worth $150,000 if that's what your calculation is. I don't know that, but I'm hoping that you will explore that, and when we walk out of here, we'll have some tasks, we'll know what we're doing. We've also been operating on the assumption that we were trying to rush to become a consecutive public water system. And thereby, I want to let you know that Beta, working off of that, we negotiated with DEP to come up with a scope of services that we would need to actually do and work product to be able to do a permit to become our own independent water source. Mr. Pecos took that information, we put it into an RFP, we went out to bid. We were absolutely delighted at the bid that we received from Beta. I believe Mr. Pecos at his last meeting gave that to you, and I believe it was approved at that time. Later on, I believe you wanted to reconsider, and I really want to thank Beta to Bob Mackey for saying that if you don't want to continue with it, he's not going to hold you to it. So I think that you're in a good position tonight to have a conversation on where do we go next. You have some resources in Mr. Mackey and Beta. You have Kevin Pecos, who is also here checking, and he's come up on his own steed to, one, answer questions that you have on the work that he's already done. So if you need to know where you are and where you need to go next, he's also here to find out whether or not you want him to continue in any capacity. So in trying to facilitate that conversation, you have in front of you a matrix, and pretty much the list that I read about the different issues are in here. I did send it out to all the water sewer board of selectmen to take a look at and make comments. I did receive some comments and made some adjustments. So as you look at the matrix, you'll see that it's broken down into sewer and water, and it's broken down into issues, into tasks, into priorities, because I do believe one of the things that I've heard from the water sewers is you need to just try to figure out where your once you decide where you want to go and how you want to do it, what is your priority, so that myself and Steve Wowlin and any engineering or consultants you have know where to focus our attention. And then you have the responsible party who would be taking care of these tasks. And then is there a timeline that you want it done by? And then is there any funding challenges, or do we have the funding to be able to do it? So I'm hoping that I've got enough so that you'll be able to take this conversation and make some decisions. As I said at the beginning when I first started talking, I think in the next 5, even 10 years, the decisions that the town of Charlton makes regarding water and sewer is going to be a major driver in how this community grows economically, residentially, and it'll affect every part of government. So, with that, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Graber, just before we get into this, just want to thank you guys for coming out again. We really appreciate it, especially on a cold, raw night. Thank you everyone for attending. And you know, and to echo what Ms. Graber said, is that we're in a very unique position where we're rounding the cliff, we're seeing everything before us, and we're ready to hit the ground running. So we want to make sure we're all on the same page and we have a good plan in place. So with that, we'll go through this matrix, and I encourage discussion. I'll try to guide us if we're getting a little bogged down on the issues, because I know there's a lot to go through. And I know I would like to stay here till midnight, but not everyone shares that sentiment. So we'll start with with number 1, which is the sewer rate study. Will the present rate sustain operations and capital?
Real quick.
Yes, Mr. Murphy?
Do you want to go through these 5 big items?
Yeah, I did. I will say that I did not put this in any specific order
Yeah,
for
in
you to
order.
go through.
You know what I mean?
Right.
I don't want to get too, there's a lot of stuff here.
Right.
But these 5 issues right here can probably get a lot of this stuff out of the way. The fact that you have 1 through 5 in the back there.
Right, and just the reason why we're going through it more in structure, where this is our backup material that we can reference it. So when it comes up here, we're able to go there and say, oh, well, in item number 2, the Beta Water plan outline, it says this. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, yeah.
Is everyone okay with that plan?
With
Instead of like going down the list here, taking those up as they come out with the matrix.
I'm fine. I do agree with him though in that it is possible that we won't get through everything in this tonight. So at least if we did do this, the big things are out of the way.
Yeah.
And then we can kind of, okay, now if we don't finish everything in here, we don't feel like, oh God, we didn't finish it.
Yeah,
you know?
there's a couple big ones here that
Okay.
I think we need.
Can I, if I can,
Maybe
let me
I
just
just
read
discuss that.
Joe Speedwack so that everybody knows
Yep.
what
Yep.
his priorities were that he sent today. This did not get sent out to everyone because of the open meeting law, but it can be read into the record now. So he says, despite not taking a vote or assigning a specific action, I felt it important to provide my prioritized list should a discussion arise. My priorities for the next 3 to 4 months would be: first priority is hiring a leader for both water and sewer. Priority focus on ensuring the sewer business operations gets aligned. And the second priority would be to create the water master plan. The second one is the sewer rate study. The third is the water rate negotiation with Southbridge. He says, I believe this is going to be held up by our existing challenges with Southbridge, such as the mediation. Capacity challenges with sewer. Establishing a more efficient way for dealing with larger users, and the water master plan, continuing on the journey to become a consecutive water system. So those were Mr. Speedwack's priorities. Then if you look in your packet next, you've got 1 through,
Do you have the copy of that, Mr.?
Yeah, that's right.
1 through 26. Copy what?
For that packet.
I just need, that's the packet that you have. There are 3 different packets. Did you get
I don't
thicker
feel
one?
that.
I have the budget, I have your memo, and I have a matrix.
Like I have the budget, matrix, and memo, I was saying through the Jones.
Okay.
You might not have a thick one.
Yeah.
No. I thought I was taking one of each.
We're going to have to take one next time. Yeah, we can do
How many do we need? 2?
Yeah.
Do you have one, John?
3.
Yes, he
Of
has.
course, John.
Okay. I'm sorry, I thought you took one of each. Okay. So there's Mr. Speedwack's letter, then there is the pending projects list. There's 1 through 26 that the interim water sewer controller put together. That matrix was directly from here. The next thing that you have in this packet is from Beta, the project approach. And I thank them, they did a good job for doing this.
So before we go on, we want to tackle, it seems like the pending project list is this, in a more organized fashion.
Correct.
That we'll go deal with item number 2, the Beta Water Plan first.
I guess I'm wondering, I think you need to decide,
I think we need to do the pending projects list before we get into our data.
I was thinking we go backwards 5 through 1, because we figure out Chris, then
Okay.
Kleinfelder gets done, then if we, Joe, we just talked about, then we go to, Beta and Kevin.
Has everybody read number 5 thoroughly?
I actually had a conversation with Chris before this meeting. He said that it was fine to put it in. There's not a clear decision on what he can and can't do. Him and I agreed that we are going to have a conversation with more at ethics to make sure we're crystal clear. So I'm not sure that you want to take that up at this time.
Okay, which is fine. I knew we got his opinion back, I just didn't know.
So you have it now, so I just wanted to make sure.
I didn't know if everybody had a chance to read through it. It's the first time I saw it.
Because he has been included in 90% of the
I
Kleinfelder
understand
stuff,
that.
so to switch it this late in the game, you know what I mean? That's why I was
Yep, but
5
he
and
needs
4.
to, my understanding from the opinion is he needs to decide whether he's going to be the consultant for the Water Sewer Commission and work for the Water Sewer Commission, oversee the line, and then he will be faithful and have to be loyal to you on the water line, and he will not be able to represent clients then that want to hook to that water line. That's the interpretation as I'm looking at this. He'd be able to still work for the highway department or the conservation by being a special municipal employee, but he would be barred from, say what he,
Now, is
with
it-
Uphams, he could not be overseeing the project of 169 and be paid by a private contractor to hook up to the water line that he's overseeing. So that's kind of the crux of it. So I think he needs to, before you start having that discussion here, I think he needs to tell you which way does he want to go,
Okay.
if that's the
Because he was
correct
on the agenda last
interpretation.
night, too.
Yeah, that's
He
yeah.
did, I don't think he came last night, so.
Okay.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, I had a discussion with someone with ethics, not the attorney, but someone's been there for 18 years, as far as taking calls from people who are not directly involved, but people who are asking for basic information. And one of the tools that ethics has is they're able to give exemptions. And also, they talk about, in length, in these sections, is that a company who has multiple employees, that the employee, specific employee is what you're talking about, can't be hop, skipping, and jumping, but another employee within the company, as long as they're not crossing over, they can participate, as I understand it, as far as doing those other projects.
My understanding
so-
is that that's not necessarily the case. That would be like an attorney working for the Board of Selectmen against a polluter.
Yep.
And then the attorney has 50 attorneys in there, and then he has another attorney working on a possible conflicting other polluter of the same.
The issue,
problem. So I don't think that that's possible,
Well,
and a municipal employee
But to
is
the
not.
contrary, Jean McKnight, she represented both Charlton and Southbridge in negotiations. So, there's example after example to where this has been allowed. And again, as long as the people stay in the framework and it's done in the light of day, ethics, from what I've been told, is look, it's all about writing the information, handing it into the town clerk, and that's what it's about. They're not trying to put anybody out of business. They're not trying to take food off of anybody's table. They just want to make sure that there is the clarity that someone from the outside could say is fine. If that's been done, this looks clean.
Mr. Singer?
Thank you. I don't doubt for a minute Mr. Lemansky's conversation. My experience and my feelings regarding anything that has to do with the state, with the Ethics Commission, is simply give it to me in writing. When I have it from the state in writing, then I feel we have the protection that we have a document. Other than that, I can find 30 people in the state who will all give different opinions, but I want to see it in writing.
Right. And just, one thing is most important thing with ethics is not that if there's something wrong, it's also the appearance of anything going on. And right now, the smell test from a top level is he's representing two financial interests and that have competing needs. We'll go with Mr. McGrath.
Well, I'll let Rob, well, he has something fresh in his mind.
Fresh before I lose it.
Mr. Lansky?
I know how I am,
Is part of the steps here, is the next step would be, whether the selectmen do it on their own, or if it has to come from water and sewer, that we request that Mr. McClure Engineering become a special employee. So it's about getting that designation. When you have the designation, then you go back, like you say, Dave, then you get the clarity, you get it in writing, what you can and can't do. Because that's what they want. They want specifics. Who's doing
Wouldn't
what?
that come from water sewer?
No,
it's the
that's
selectmen.
No, it's all from the select, yeah.
And again, it's, look, you know, there's the old saying, you know, an engineer's an engineer. The problem that we have, well, the problem, but it's because McClure has been involved in so much of this, including multiple meetings at DEP with ExxonMobil. He's been down at our place close to 5 or 6 years. He knows where all the skeletons are. So it's tough just to go and pick someone else up, especially when we're looking at 60,000 feet of water line that's going to go in.
Absolutely.
And again, this is, and McClure's been working with Kleinfelder and Maurer for all this time. So, and this, again, there's things in that written document, the book that's going to go out, the bid document, probably 230 pages. And I know one of my pet peeves is I want to make sure, from what we've learned from doing other projects, is when there's surplus material, that the town has the first option to direct where that material goes,
Right.
such as Burlingame Road behind the school to make a loop in that driveway. So I think it's important that you have someone who is already familiar with it. And McClure wrote that document, I think in 2013, when we thought we were ready to go, but Southbridge, not Southbridge, but Exxon said, no go until you have your deal with Southbridge and we know you get the supply.
Absolutely, and no one's doubting Chris's expertise and also, you know, and his ethics. We all know that he's, you know, above the table kind of guy. Just, we want to make sure, you know, ethics is not, you know, this is nothing supersedes ethics. Ethics is our number one priority, so we don't want to make sure we're following the law.
But Rob,
But the point of this is, and I hope that Chris would choose to be the town's representative versus the representative for others, but it just, everybody needs to be clear, and he needs to make a choice, that's all I'm saying. So if you go to this, and
John,
can I just read 2 sentences?
Sure.
Okay. Mr. McGrath, is that okay? Yeah, that's fine. All right. Section 17 also prohibits a municipal employee from receiving compensation from anyone other than the town in connection with a particular, and I'm on page 2 of the top paragraph. In connection with any particular matters that are of a direct and substantial interest to the town. Section 17 will apply less restrictively if you are a special municipal employee, which is what Mr. Lemansky's talking about. But if you continue on, it says, pursuant to Section 17, a special municipal employee may receive compensation from or act as an agent or attorney for someone other than the town in a particular matter in which he has a direct and substantial interest, so long as, 1, he has not participated in the matter at any time as a municipal employee. And you have to remember, the special municipal employee designation is the engineer, not the person. So it is the company. So the company becomes the employee. 2, the matter is not in the last year and has not been a subject of his official responsibility. So if he chooses to do what you know, we're hoping he does, and he chooses to work for the town, then he's not going to be able to be paid by anyone else that wants to hook up to that line. And 3, the matter is not pending in the municipal agency in which he is serving, and that matter is certainly pending and will be pending for the next 3 years. So I don't think anybody disagrees, Mr. Lemansky, that Chris has been here on the ground floor. I think what we've recognized is that there's a certain things you can do and you can't do, and they appeared a little fuzzy up until now.
Mr. McGrath?
My question was, if I believe I heard you say, Ron, that you and Chris were going to have a conversation. I think that the best way to do this is to bring out the specifics that we think, and Chris can speak more to these than we can.
Sure.
Where the differences would be, where he would be working for the town, and then where he might be doing something else. I think that Nora from Ethics can probably shed some light on that and probably put in writing whether he should or shouldn't do that. And I think that would satisfy. You know, I would hope that Chris would choose, if he had to make a choice, to work for the town, because just dealing with him with ExxonMobil was great, and I know you guys are very, very happy with him down there. So probably that would be the next step. Let's get something, you know, let's fine tune this thing from ethics. We've been burned by ethics once already. I don't want to again.
I agree with Mr. McGrath.
One sentence, last comment, but from my conversation with the fellow named Dave down there, Chief Quinto, I believe is his last name, he made a point that what ethics can do is accept exceptions. And that's I'm not seeing anywhere in here, but from what I've read, as far as these rules, they didn't make no exceptions. Thank you.
That'd be nice.
Yeah, and I remember, you know, taking my ethics training, and that was part of it. You can't work in the same thing for like a year, and there's a lot of rules and a lot of regulations, and you know, it's a complex field. And if you can get something from that in writing, even more better.
Right, but they will only give people who are directly involved
Right.
the ability to talk to the lawyer and get him right. But I believe the next step is if we want to go further with this, is to designate him as a special employee, and then let
Right, and
the employer
it's-
figure out what he wants to do, and let the state tell us what he can do. And
Right.
then you can go either A or B, and
Right.
that's it.
So basically, the ball is, you know, in Chris's court to see what he wants to do next on that.
I think he's become a special employee.
Right. Well, there's still a couple things we're talking about. Then we can then
Okay.
a special employee,
Thank you.
and then
Thank you.
each case by case basis.
Okay.
All right. So that takes care of number 5?
Yep. So.
And that was Robin and Chris are gonna talk to ethics again, correct?
Yep.
Do we have a hard deadline on Exxon for their main water design review? 'Cause I know they're looking to break ground spring. When's our deadline? Because this falls into Chris too.
They've already asked us for a 90% review.
Yeah, I know.
Back in December, and then they asked
Beginning of December.
again.
Right.
Okay.
And Veolia's said no.
Yeah, I know. Well, this is what I'm kind of getting at.
Right.
And so we need to get some kind of review done for the town. I know Fire's done some of their review on that.
Because I believe we have Veolia as the backup.
They've said no.
Dave said no?
Yes.
Okay.
Can I just make this point, is 2013, when the design, I'm talking about the design of the first loop, which didn't include the extension down Olvester Road, didn't include H. Putnam Road, and didn't include like Dulwich Court and those other side streets. But all of that had gone through, McClure had reviewed that. Also, I believe, Heather Blakely over at Southbridge had also reviewed that, and I believe, in fact, Robin, I think you were at that meeting in Southbridge when we talked about the plan, and we talked.
But we don't have any idea whether or not they've changed anything, or,
The
I mean,
plan still
somebody
needs to
needs
be
to take a
reviewed
look at those
at
plans.
90% where it stands today, not where it was
Right.
4 years ago.
Because I think that there's been some changes.
Right.
The one of the main changes is there's no longer a pump station at Masonic Home. They felt there's pressure there. But again, whatever changes were, they were small.
And I know you were asking about having the model double-checked with Dewberry, and that was one of the things Beta would be doing, would be
Because I think
checking
at the
that
elevation of
modeling.
where the pump station would be, in talking to Peter Calvarazzo, you're right at the cusp, so under fire flow or a catastrophic flow situation, it's gonna drop the pressure up the Masonic Home below that 20 PSI mark, regardless of.
Then somebody needs to be sure that this thing's gonna work, if it's gonna draw pressure and there's no pump. I thought they had to be a pump, but
That's right.
I'm not a technical person.
I've been told no pump. Alice, if I may, Masonic Home is not going to connect with fire suppression. They're going to
I
use their own
understand that.
system.
I'm talking about the rest of the system, Rob.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So I'm just going to try to rein things back in just to make
Yeah.
sure. So we're on, I assume we're on the Kleinfelder correspondence?
Yes.
Yeah, so we're talking about the design and the need to review that.
Yep.
I think what we should do is maybe give Chris a week or 2 weeks to decide what he's doing, and if not.
I would say 3 days.
Yeah.
Oh, whatever, I don't care, but
We need to get this
we need to
done.
put a hard deadline on it, and if he ain't the guy, we're going to somebody else.
So
Exactly.
can we talk as if we go, Chris, if he's cleared and he decides, and then find a B? You know, a plan B, whether it's, we look at Beta, or whether we go back to Viola, or whether we go to Graves, who's done a lot of the oversight for the planning board. I mean, you have choices. I just like you to say, you need to make a choice and say, is it Chris? Chris needs to make a choice based on whatever ethics said. And then you need to have maybe a plan A and a plan B, so that we can move this thing.
I'd like to say, I mean, Beta's here.
Bob, you want to come up?
Maybe give us a proposal,
Can you,
the review of the
have you
Exxon
seen
stuff,
those
because
designs? I don't know.
we can move right into it.
Yeah.
Because in the plan review would be also all the hydraulic modeling that Dewberry did, I believe. That's kind of critical, in my
That
opinion.
is what they were going to do,
Right.
Right,
because
that's
that's
part
part
of
of the.
their-
That, I understand that's part of the RFP, but I think that's critical in getting the final 10% of the design, either yay or nay, or what they need to change in the design. After-
Particularly if there's a question about the hydraulic grade line.
Right.
So would that be something that, so I think as a group, you know, let's agree that, you know, our number one option is Chris. If Chris wants to do it and can do it, we'll go with Chris. Our next plan is to find another engineering firm and planning firm. In that case, could Beta provide those services that we're looking for?
Yes, you could.
Okay.
So, but there's a part B to that, as I understand. Chris was not going to do the check Dewberry's calculations, correct?
Right.
Okay.
That was all part of.
And on so you're gonna have to have somebody check, and just, I'm just asking right now. So we need somebody to check the hydraulic calculations.
And that was part of what the RFP was.
Okay, so that's like a
For
part
the,
B of the client.
for the water master
You
plan.
look at this, there's the list.
Go ahead. It's fresh, it's
Well, it's
fresh.
fresh, it's fresh. If I'm not mistaken, Kleinfelder has been in constant contact with Peter Calderazzo. In fact, I remember doing a walkthrough of Masonic Home, and they called him on the spot.
Yeah, but one
Kleinfelder did.
One was the last fire flow that was
Well,
applied to
well,
water.
we're talking about putting in a potable water line, okay? And I know that fire flow is gonna end up being part of it.
Right.
But we don't need that calculation in order to put the line in. The line is gonna make.
But if
the
we're
turn.
using calculations that are.
You're gonna have economic development, they're gonna be
Right.
seeking that fire flow, I think you
Right.
are gonna.
First of all, is we're not putting any lines in this town ever again over 8 inches unless it's a main transmission line. That's a problem that we made on Stafford Street and Northside Road. That's why we have a problem with
Once
storage.
consumption starts and people start tying in, you can't make a statement that.
Mr. McGrath?
So, my question is, Kleinfelder has sent, and this is what we're discussing now, Kleinfelder has sent us documents with 90% of the system design. They want us to comment back on the design. So, part A of that is that Chris McClure is going to have the option to do that check, okay? Is the part B of getting back to Kleinfelder saying that we need somebody to check on Dewberry's calculations? Is Kleinfelder using Dewberry's calculations to design the system, or are we supposed to be giving them new calculations?
I personally feel new calculations would be advantageous for the system.
And that's for your board to decide. That's.
It's my understanding that Kleinfelder has been working hand in hand with Dewberry throughout this entire process, because they needed to get the okay from Gary as far as the funding of hiring Dewberry. That's, my understanding is that he's been involved with Kleinfelder. That's why he doesn't report to us. We don't know exactly what he did. All that information is with Kleinfelder.
So we don't know.
It's not been
We're
updated,
just-
because when we went with the RFP, Dewberry was one of the bidders, and they did not say in that interview that they had updated that model. So it's still left over from a couple of years ago when we were negotiating the IMA to find out if the system would even work. So far as I know, they did not say that they had updated that model.
Ms. McGrath?
Just, could the water sewer board just say whether they are happy enough to stay with what Dewberry's done already, and that's what we're gonna use for Kleinfelder's, calculations and building a new system, or do we have to go with somebody else and get readouts?
My opinion is Kleinfelder is a licensed engineer in the state of Massachusetts. They would be completely negligent if they designed a plan that didn't work. So they're responsible for that operation of the plan. And I hear what Alex is saying, and Alex is correct, is look, we want to make sure that we have these fire flows, but I think a lot of that's got to do with what we already have in place. And also is what we can't do is we can't really do the fire flows because we don't have a big tank online. Or we can't, because the big tank is going to give us a little more pressure, and also it's going to give us a lot more available volume. So the actual calculations is going to, as far as an engineer, they're going to be making assumptions based on having 785,000 gallons and the tank is 85% full, is going to produce X. So.
But see, the new hydraulic model will give us what the current status is with what we've added in the last few years. And correct me if I'm wrong, but then we can take that and then add in the tank at a certain height to give us what it will be. Because if you remember, Chris had trouble getting really good flows and accurate fire flows for treehouse.
Oh, no, right.
So
Inconsistency.
what has changed since the original modeling? What has been added?
Well,
Nothing?
the child loop.
Well, that's a big thing.
Right.
That's a big component, plus the fire flows. I think it
It
will
is and it
have that
isn't.
model.
Right. It is.
It
It
is.
is and it isn't. There's certain aspects that it does change and there's certain aspects that it doesn't.
Mr. Pecos?
If it helps you, I had conversations with both Chris McClure as well as.
Can you come up to the table?
Sure. I had conversations with both Chris McClure
Yes.
as well as with Peter Calderazzo at Dewberry prior to the writing of the RFP, which Beta responded to. Chris saw calculations, hydraulic calculations, which were undertaken to facilitate the connection of Treehouse Brewery. At the time he saw those, he felt that they were sharply at odds with the hydraulic model. In other words, the reality of those flow tests did not represent what the hydraulic model indicated. He expressed to me great concern that the hydraulic model was out of date, badly out of date, needed updating, and that he further expressed the concern that he was troubled that ExxonMobil might be designing with an improper hydraulic model. You can have a discussion with Chris about that, certainly, to verify what I've represented. Second conversation with Peter Calderazzo, who of course is the caretaker of the current hydraulic model. Peter agreed readily that there needed to be a provision in the RFP for updating the hydraulic model because it was, in point of fact, badly out of date. That's from the two experts you're talking about.
Real quick too, have we got comments back from Southbridge, the operator?
They're not making comments to us, they're making them directly to Kleinfelder because we haven't had anybody that's been in that process. I don't think we've had a meeting that I'm aware of.
Because they're gonna back
I'm
that
not
up.
going.
You know what I mean? They'll back that up too. If they don't have pressures, they're the ones responsible.
It's just
You know.
so that everybody understands, it's not, the hydraulic model isn't simply a matter of pressure. It's a matter of getting sufficient water under certain conditions from point A to point B. Point A being a standpipe, source, whatever. Typically, the most distal, the furthest point on that distribution line under stress conditions, usually a bad fire. But there's a lot of other sophisticated calculations going to it, and I'm sitting next to two people who know more about this than anybody else in the room by a long shot. All I can tell you is that a hydraulic model is an extremely sophisticated tool that allows you to make decisions like what pipe goes where, how big does it need to be, what valve goes where. Every single component and appurtenance in the system is based on the hydraulic model. If the hydraulic model is not accurate, then everything you're designing is potentially incorrect and will need to be fixed later.
And I imagine the assumptions that we make about, let's say, the tank, that we can update that later and then correct the model.
Right.
Correct. Real quick.
Hold on.
I would invite you
No,
to
I'm
talk
gonna
about-
add a question.
Yeah.
Mr. Draft,
That's all right, let Gabe go.
You know, that'll kick in. I read over the RFP and it's excellent, and the price, you know, is very reasonable, thank you very much. Let's say Chris doesn't come through with this. Obviously, there's a lot of work he's already done. I would imagine that work would get transferred over to the next person. You should be able to take a couple bits and pieces out of that water master plan, right? Or like a hydraulic model, and then add that little piece to update, to get to this big picture of overviewing this Kleinfelder.
Are you talking about the model itself?
What I'm getting at is, I think the water master plan should be done when the system's all done. This is my personal opinion.
The full master plan.
Full master plan, so that way we have an accurate picture, because basically you're telling us everything we need to know about running the water system, and how to run it, do this, how to flush, how to everything, and I think it's perfect. We're gonna be set up and ready to walk right in as an operator. But I think we should do it after all the pipes are in. That's my 2 cents. Maybe you can tell me different, you know.
Well, I think in making any of these decisions, you really do need an accurate water model.
Correct.
And I haven't actually seen the existing model. I've heard about it, but I haven't actually seen it. The issue with the water model is, I heard that there's a new loop that's been added. I mean, a water model is basically, it's a mathematical model. It's mathematically calculating how water will flow under certain conditions. Water will follow the path of least resistance. Your water system is a living organism, essentially. You know, it tuberculates over time, you have biofilms that grow. So depending on how long that model was last calibrated, your pipes could continue to be tuberculated. You could actually have some valves that might actually be closed that you don't realize they're closed, that may come out during the calibration. Without the calibration, to your point, if the model isn't reflecting reality, and reality is what's going on right now. So if we were building the model, say today, we'd be building the model to mimic what's happening right now. Whether there's a tank offline or not, we'd be building it to mimic now. Because when we do our calibration, we want it to be matching the system as it currently is. And then to your point, you can then take a look at, if we add pipes, if we add a tank, if we add a booster, what would the impact be to the system? So that's kind of circling back. All your points are valid, but I think the ultimate point is you do need an accurate model to be able to make any decisions moving forward correctly. Because you could actually be making wrong decisions if the model's not correct.
Mr. Berkman, just one additional thing with that. I imagine, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is you can do a lot of this before it's finally finished. You can get get it closed using the water model, using practices, guidance, whatever, to get a portion of this plan done, a working master plan. Then when it's finished, you do all the testing, everything's in place, then you can fine tune that plan and then have a finished plan. So I don't see why we wouldn't want to start earlier, because this is a huge project, and starting this plan, which I imagine will take a while, starting it now, getting all the things you can do before it's finished, started, underway, and then fine tuning it later. Ms. Singer, did you have a comment?
Just for clarification, so the impression I'm under from the opinions over here is that the first thing that we should be doing is a new water model before anything else.
I would say so. Particularly if you're making decisions off using that existing water model.
Mr. Lemansky?
No, I'm sorry, Dave, what did you say? That
The first thing we should do before we take any steps in any other regard regarding that is create a new water model, so that we are working with an accurate water model for everything we do going forward.
Right, but I believe what was said was the water model is going to be based on what we have existing.
But they're going to
also-
make a
That we know
new
about it.
water model, not using an old outdated water
And
model.
also, we can
Treehouse
add,
Brewery wasn't on the old one. Uplands wasn't on the old one.
What was that?
Treehouse Brewery, their draw wasn't, I don't think, on the old model.
Right, right.
The
And-
Uplands, how many units was that?
30.
So there's no,
The-
now 30,
I do want to,
none of that was in there.
I do want to point out what Mr. Pecos was saying, that Chris had told him, as far as the variable pressures, which is true, that when the water gets to the top of the hill by CVS and starts going down the hill, it hits a PRV valve. And what's happening is, it's a little bit unknown, but it has to be hammering. Because all you gotta do is put a pressure gauge. In fact, when they just turned the water on at the Upland Farms, they had pressures there at 80 pounds, which they shouldn't have had pressures at 80 pounds. Then it dropped, and the needle was going like this, and that's what was happening over at Treehouse. Same part of Route 20, the far end there's a glitch in the system there.
so Mr. Mackey, is that
The glitch in
something,
the system may be equipment.
Mr. Mackey,
Because
would you be able to look into that as part of your investigation in the
Yes,
proposal?
the models can handle transients, which is a
Well, Calderazzo looked at it, and they already checked the PRV, and they say, no, it's fine. So it's a little, there's a ghost there, there's something scary.
Mr. McGrath?
Through the chair. And Rob, I know what you're saying about Dewberry, and that Kleinfelder has some, due diligence that they have to be using the correct
Sure.
model. I believe, after hearing what Mr. Pecos has said, is, in talking with Chris and talking with Gallerazzo or
Peter Calderazzo.
Peter Calderazzo from Dewberry, I'm assuming, correct? And just listening to some of the issues that have come up here now, I think that we would be better served, or you guys would be better served to make the decision to do a water, the water study now. And get the freshest data that you can to make sure that Kleinfelder is, the plan is gonna work the way it's supposed to work, and that when all is said and done, that we're gonna have what we need for the rest of the system. It sounds like we have a couple of issues going on now.
Yep.
And to areas that we've just added users to at that end of the line.
Mr. Bertheum?
If I may, real quick, and it sounds to me like we maybe need to grab a piece here, grab a piece here. You know what I mean? And the puzzle that was laid out might not be the picture we need. We might need different pieces. Now, if I'm not mistaken, isn't a hydraulic modeling kind of expensive? Wasn't Dewberry like over $100,000 or something like that?
Yeah,
It's
but
$4,820.
right, it was already part of the RFP once.
It's already here,
Okay, so
$4,000.
would that,
And that's paid from a grant.
Right.
I agree with that 100%. So would that cover kind of, if you're overhearing what we're talking about, your initial part of that, would that do that? Or are we talking about another $50,000 on top of this grant to do all kinds of other calculations and investigation?
Everything, the approach we had laid out, I don't have the packet in front of me, so I apologize. Thank you. Good one. Let's see.
Because I'm all for this, I just want to make sure that,
No, I understand what you're saying.
yeah, you know what I mean, with having some due diligence, I work with a lot of engineers.
Yeah, take some.
Let me add another piece too, because you're talking about Kleinfelder doing due diligence. You have another piece that we haven't factored in, which is Casella and down there. So that water line, which is in development, which we're just trying to figure out who's paying what, but that has already been started to put together. If that comes on, that's gonna come off of 169, that's gonna actually come off our system.
When did it
And
get
how?
developed?
Casella has been working on that. There's not
Has
a
anything
payer,
come in front of
but
our board about the Casella line? I haven't seen, have you seen anything?
nobody's seen it. What I'm telling you
Rubber
is,
decisions, though.
I am telling you that that is something that's gonna come on to you quickly, as if, we know we need a water line down there, they know they need a water line down there, DEP knows they need a water line down there. the conversations are happening, trying to figure out, I know that they come up with amounts. So you also need to factor that in, because I don't know how critical that'll be as to more draw coming off of 169.
Mr. McGrath?
So just, I remember having this conversation before, and I don't know if it was with Rob or with Joe Speedwack, or I can't remember who it was with, but I thought if there was a water line going in up around the contamination up there, that the water line was going to end up coming from Southbridge and not up through 169.
That's not the way they're talking about it.
Because there was, and the reason I say that is because there was some sort of stagnation problem. It was talked about. I remember it being talked about, but Rob?
So hold on, so I don't make a quick point, we'll go Mr. Berthing, then Mr. Pecos, then we'll go to Mr. Romansky. Quick point, just one thing, I think Mr. Berthing, you said about all the puzzle pieces and getting them and putting it all together. That strikes me, and with all these pieces moving around, that's, and every time I keep hearing that just tells us that we need to have this plan more and more, so we can bring all those pieces together. So I'll let you, Mr. Berthing, Mr. Pecos, then Mr. Romansky.
15,000 was the model.
Okay.
It's the first 3 tasks.
So the next question is, would you be up for doing certain bits and pieces of that RFP and then continuing them afterwards?
Yes.
You know what I mean, to finish the rest of the project then?
Correct.
Because I agree with the whole project 100%. I just wanted to make sure the timing was the best with the town.
Yeah, that's why we broke it down this way.
And I saw that.
You can choose what you want in the order that you want it.
And just a quick question, because I know you, one of the biggest concerns you had was making sure with all the complete data after everything's in place. I imagine this is not going to be done in a month. That you, after being, this would be over time, and you'd be able to take that information from the completed model and put it in here.
Correct. And it might take Exxon 2 or 3 years.
Right.
So I just want to make sure
right. And that's reflected in your bid?
I'm sorry?
And that's reflected in your, in what you laid out? About, so if Exxon, takes 2 years to build this, being able to, after 2 years, add that to
Oh,
the
yeah,
same.
we could.
Okay, so that's in this.
And that's what I'm getting. I don't want to spend $70,000 and then 3 years go, hey, guess what? You need to spend another $50,000
Exactly.
because we did it all, and now you've got 20 miles more in pipe.
Right.
And that's all. And if it's all good and it goes hand in hand, I'm all for it.
Thank you. Mr. Pecos, Mr. Lemansky, Mr. Singer.
Just a note with respect to the hydraulic model components of the RFP and the contract. Those were written in close consultation with Peter Calderazzo and DEP in Worcester. And they called for, if Dewberry were the successful RFP proposer, they would take the existing hydraulic model, do 10 new hydrant tests, and then update the model. If Dewberry were not the successful proposer, and they weren't, Beta is, then Dewberry would be required to turn the model over to Dewberry, over to Beta. Beta would do the 10 hydrant tests, and then they would apply the science behind updating the model. So it's important to understand where Beta is now in the contract, Dewberry has to turn that model over. That model is probably worth $100,000 to $150,000 if you were to start from
Good evening. The time is now 7:50, and the Charlton Public Library will be closing at 8 o'clock. If you're using the computers, please sign off. If you have items to check out, please bring them to the circulation desk. Thank you, and have a good evening.
Feel like I'm at the airport.
So then, Mr. Mackey, in your modeling, you would use the data we already have that we spent money on. Okay, Mr. Lemansky, you had a?
Yes, as far as, I believe, there's 19 homes in Casella area.
I thought that was 40. I
As
thought
far
there was
as,
40
as far as
contaminated.
the Ellie Pond Circle.
There's several.
Okay, but anyways, right now, our source of water comes from Southbridge, goes by Berry Corner Road. There's going to be a pump station across the street, and then gets pumped to where we are. The pumps that are at Mass Ave, they've been described as shaking when they're on, in order to pump uphill in order to make the tank up here at Hammond Road. At Berry Corner Road, as far as the vertical goes, it's going to be a heavy pump in order to get it up there. The problem is that section of town, which is a very remote section, if we were to find water somewhere else, that we would not be able to deliver it to where the water would go down 169, then go back up Berry Corner Road, and then get stuck up there where those homes are. It makes the most logical sense to where Southbridge already has water lines in, and they're already planning for their industrial park that's already up at the airport, for them to service the water that's no more than 2,000 feet away, and it'd be downhill.
So
Well,
thank you,
Rob,
Ms.
I
Mays.
don't think that that's the way they did it, and actually, I think you guys.
Can we get back to Kleinfeld?
Yeah,
Let's
let's-
finish something. I think
No, I
you
think we're
guys-
getting off topic. I'm just gonna.
Well,
I just want to say that I think you guys, when you did 169, put a stub in for that.
No, we put a
So you
stub
might
in,
want to
period.
check in.
We just put a stub in because it's an
Check in with the
intersection.
design,
so.
because I
Yeah.
think that you've already
some
seen
people were
that.
talking to Casella, some other people like myself were saying, we can't go up there because it's senseless. Because
So,
if in fact we find our own source and become
Somebody
truly
is
independent,
so-
we can't
Mr.
service
Szymanski,
it.
that is a very good point.
Okay.
It makes perfect engineering sense. I'm not a water engineer, and I would like to see what plan they come up with. That sounds very logical, but just to kind of get back on topic, that's just one aspect of needing a plan. What if all those what if scenarios, being able to have the plan and update those.
Well, that's
So,
why it's important. If people
I think
are
that's a very
thinking
good
these
point.
things, they need to come to Water and Sewer and
Correct.
talk to us about it.
Right, absolutely. So,
Thank you.
I'm sorry. We have Mr. Singer, then Mr. McGrath, then Mr. Braithwaite.
Well, I was gonna make a motion, but,
That does take priority. Yes.
I'd like to make a motion that we give Chris McClure, what's today?
Today's the
Tuesday?
24th.
We give him by the end of the week to clarify his decision and where he wants to be with the Water and Sewer Commission.
And then move on. Otherwise.
And move with him or without him. And if, depending on his outcome, we then meet with Beta, because they've already shown us in good faith that prices are reasonable, contract was reasonable, somewhat familiar with the system. He's been working with Kevin previously, that we can move in with Mr. Beta, or I don't know what was your name again?
Collins.
I'm like, this is coming.
Get you a t-shirt.
He appreciates knowing he just inherited the company.
That we need a backup plan and this cannot wait. So basically, that next week, we have a meeting with the Water and Sewer to clarify objectives and goals. Take that RFP, maybe pick a few parts apart of it and get going.
Mr. Chair, that is your
Well-
domain.
It was a long one, but I can make it.
You're in a joint meeting, so anybody can second.
Your motion covers two things.
Well, we wouldn't vote on this. It's the water
That's
sewer.
the water sewer issue.
Yeah, it's a water sewer.
I thought you were doing it.
There's two things. You started with Kleinfeld, and then you went into Beta's master plan, which is number 2, going through the list.
So I think his motion was to give Chris McClure a deadline by Friday.
Yeah.
And to go with him if he accepts, and to move on to Beta, I think that's what you said, if he does not accept, or if he doesn't decide.
Yeah, but then you went
So
into
to
that.
clarify the motion, it's basically, they're gonna do the oversight, Beta will do the oversight, but we need maybe that hydraulic model or a couple pieces to help further with Kleinfelder. And you will have to engage in discussions with Kleinfelder and probably kind of pick that up. That's your business, it's not mine.
Who's doing the oversight?
We have to find somebody to do the oversight.
If it's not correct.
So
If it's not correct. So Beta can give us a proposal to provide oversight. Or at a minimum, we need the plan oversight. Whether it's boots on the ground, that's one thing.
Just through the chair.
This is Alex's motion.
Oh, Al, and just for a little discussion, I think it behooves you that if whoever reviews your drawings is going to do your inspection
Correct.
and then answer any field questions that the contractor has. So once you make the decision to go with, the
Correct.
overview of Kleinfelder's drawings, then you switch to that list. And that's just,
Do you have that capacity?
Yes, it's
within
peer
your
review
organization?
type services will do that.
Yeah.
And I will second your motion for discussion.
Okay. And just my.
So we got a motion and a second for discussion.
Okay. The intention of this motion is to have the backup plan. This isn't you got a grant, you got the go-ahead to go ahead and do all this. But, you know, following another meeting, we work out the bugs and exactly kind of get a clear scope and go from there. Another water sewer meeting. That's my intention of this.
Discussion on the motion. Gabe, I think your time frame may be a little tight, and also as I think for McClure to make a decision, he would need some type of assurance that the selectmen would be approving him as a special employee. Then he would be able to get that information from the ethics and saying, if I'm approved, then I go forward is what's my exposure. So I don't know if that can happen in 3 days or 4 days. That's what I'm saying. A, the time's a little short, and I think there needs to be something in there about it.
I don't think that we've ever refused as a board of selectmen anybody that want to be a special employee for that reason that you've stated. That's never been an issue, probably never will be. But yeah, I think first you have to, I think Gabe's right, you have to have a time frame on this, number one. Chris does have to make an important decision. He needs some information from ethics, and I think that,
Yeah, if they get a meeting
yeah,
Tuesday,
but-
it's not the,
yeah, but ultimately, the thing is that we, as a town, need to get going and get Kleinfelder information back so that we can get,
That's-
be ready to go.
Worry a month behind
Yeah.
on what they're looking for. So, go ahead.
So I think I
Thank
can
you.
help fast
Yes.
track it with Chris, and we can get on the phone, possibly try it for tomorrow, see if we can get on the phone for tomorrow, and
then
make sure we clarify that. I think the special municipal employee is something you're gonna need to do anyway, because he does work for highway and conservation. But I think it's gonna be, I don't think it's gonna answer this question.
So, Ms. Craver, so do you feel any way that it would behoove us not to appoint Mr. McClure as a special municipal employee?
I just wanna make sure that he understands whether or not doing that allows him to do what he thinks he can do. That's all.
So
I
that
wanna
kind
make
of ties
sure.
into this whole ethics.
Correct.
So it's all one.
if I may, Ms. Graver, do you think if we put it, we just had our meeting yesterday, if we invite Beta to the following meeting, which is in 2 weeks, that would be enough time to basically, so if we can get it on the agenda now, and you know, our sewer water administrator would contact you if, you know, things get clarified within the 2 weeks. But basically telling you now, giving you a heads up by our next meeting.
I would suggest that maybe you come back next Tuesday to the Board of Selectmen's meeting, and then
I'm just
we should be
yeah.
able to maybe have an understanding at that point,
We've already got a
what's
contract.
gonna happen.
Yeah, no. So, but we gotta kind of go through it. So what I'm saying is if we set up the meeting, that gives Chris 2 weeks to get it figured out one way or the other.
Yeah.
And if not, we're already set up with the meeting, then it's not
Beta
2
can
more
start
weeks.
moving forward with their contract, starting with the high.
Correct, then we can just talk about the contract real quick, go over certain points, get up to stuff with everything that's going on, and go from there, right?
It seems like
We've got 3 things going on.
kicking the can down the
Yeah, it
road.
doesn't-
I think that's part of what we were hoping to do tonight, is to really make some decisions come out of here so people could make decisions. You know, if.
Yeah, but it's Chris's
If you're,
decision.
I know, but
Right.
if your motion was, if Chris says yes, then he gets to work. If he says no,
Then we're back to where we are right
then
now.
you don't need another
May I
meeting.
interject this?
You need to, if you're okay with Beta starting that
But
review, then.
we just talked about cherry picking certain items that we might have to start sooner than later. That's all, I just want to go over the major scope of everything and get it clarified.
And we will once we get up to 2, but, because that's the master plan. That's why Mr. Mackey's here.
We don't even have a price to oversee, to do the peer review for,
Yeah, but
For
you're combining the master plan with the old.
that's what I'm getting at. That's why we need the meeting to clarify it also. So Beta can come at us with a proposal of how much it is to do the water design review, because that's a whole separate that's a whole separate entity.
Yeah.
And then we need to cherry pick some of the stuff out of the RFP that helps with the design review. This is a lot of moving parts. I'm sorry, but
I know it is.
I just don't want to waste any time. If we get it on board for next meeting,
So can we look at some of the other pieces and maybe these will start to fall through?
Okay, we got a motion on the
We got a
table.
motion, yeah.
Okay, but are you willing to modify your motion relative to the time that you had mentioned Friday? Now you had mentioned at our next meeting, so make it Tuesday, the night of the selectmen's meeting?
When's the open meeting law?
From the floor to.
48
for
hours,
agenda?
So you can do their next meeting on Tuesday, right?
No, for the agenda. So, like,
48 hours.
so would that, is that Thursday, Friday?
Thursday.
Okay, so by the close of business Wednesday, Chris has to give us a decision.
You mean this coming Wednesday?
Following Wednesday,
Oh, okay.
so
All
we
right,
can
all right, that
have
makes a little more
Mr.
sense.
Vader on our agenda for that Monday.
All right.
We
You
didn't
still
gain
keep-
anything by that
And it's-
time-wise.
Haven't done anything.
No, and it's with the understanding.
Of course it is.
With the understanding that there's a high likelihood he will be appointed as a special employee, so he can go to ethics and say, I'm a special employee, what can I do? So that will
I
help
think he
his
needs to
decision.
go first before he comes.
Correct, but
for the-
we're giving Chris a week and a half to get that written document from ethics, to then go to you and get this all approved, and if,
I don't think you're gonna get a written document
Can-
in even a week and a half. I think what I'm recommending you do is have me get on the phone with ethics, we have a conversation with him, get clarity on if he can do and narrow it very specifically. If he does the
Perfect.
design oversight, can he then make an application, whether it's within 1 year or any time, can he make an application on behalf of another that wants to hook that water? I think it's very narrow, very clear, and him and I getting on the phone can probably answer that question, whether or not special employee.
That's what I'm
can
saying.
take care of it.
Which is where we left it.
So if you just authorize me to work with him with that, I can come up with that quickly.
yeah.
And then, I don't know that you need to have another meeting. What you need to do is to
I'm
say,
okay
here's
with
the
it,
things.
if you tell me it's okay, I'm
Okay.
fine. I'm already
Then-
okay with it before this.
All right, so if you, I guess I'm trying to fast track. So one of the reasons that I put in this matrix, things for people to do. So if you say, Robin, please get this done, work with Chris, come back with, if he says yes, then just notify everybody that that's what he's gonna do, and ethics has concurred, and I will agree, concur with you. If not, then my suggestion to you is that you go through the rest of this work order, prioritize it, here's what you need to do, and then either authorize me or somebody else to work with Beta to get this thing going, because you don't wanna lose this season, you want construction to start. I think, and I think you wanna give an engineer a reasonable amount of time to be able to turn it around. And if you wait out another week and a half or 2 weeks, I think spring is around the corner.
That's gonna be the end of February.
They're not
before
gonna have
decision's
any
made.
time for bidding. And I know it was important to you, Mr. Loyansky, to try and get that thing going and get Bay Path hooked up and, keep this thing moving.
Again, I believe that the next step in the process is to select them when we appoint. And then, in concert, the discussion with ethics and the floor, the three of us on the line, with the statement of the assumption is, yes, he's a special town employee, then what is the framework of how we can work?
I would recommend that go on the Selectmen's Tuesday meeting,
Yes.
and that Chris and I have that information at that time, and he is agreeing that special municipal employee status, after the two of us talk with ethics, he says exactly what he wants. They can do that municipal employee, whatever. I'd suggest Tuesday, and then it's done, You can either post jointly with the Board of Selectmen, or you can have a couple of representatives come to the board meeting and then figure that piece out. At the end of that meeting, of the Board of Selectmen's meeting on Tuesday, you will know, is it Chris doing this, or do you need to go to your B? Done.
Yeah, exactly, and then the B's already in place.
Right.
We talk about the scope, and he's off and running Tuesday.
So why don't we look at here what the scope is and try and figure that out, and figure out what your priorities are, and then we can still figure out, because you can still say it's A, B, you want to do this.
Do we have a framework of what the motion is? So
Well, that's what is the motion?
Mr. McGrath, you were about to say something?
Go ahead.
No, you were about to say,
No, I'll wait, go ahead.
you clarifying me, or?
No.
He's looking.
You know how I
I feel like we're all on the same page, it's
Yeah,
just
it is,
we're
but you
saying
know how I
different
said-
things.
You know how I said let Rob go because the thought is fresh. The thought was fleeting.
So what I have here is to give Chris, to clarify by the end of the week, determine whether he wants to work for the water sewer in town of Charlton. If not, pursue Beta to do the oversight and modeling. And that's easy enough to just get a, he can just add on to this thing after. I can send those documents to him.
It's hundreds of thousands of dollars.
You're gonna
Right?
get an hourly rate, the same thing you get from Chris. You're not gonna get a
I
full
understand that,
contract.
but this is what I'm getting at. I can't have Steve just okay this
No.
Wednesday.
No.
So that's what I'm getting at. This has to
Right.
go to the meeting. We have to talk about this.
Right, well, this is just,
Yeah, but we have to figure out where,
What do you
Chris has to
want?
figure
Yeah.
out.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So
Yeah.
just put him on the meeting for next Monday and we're done.
well, he was supposed to come, obviously. before-
Absolutely. If he doesn't show up for Tuesday,
Right.
he's out the door.
So we're not meeting next Monday.
No, the following one. in
Well,
2
that's why
weeks.
I'm saying, come to Monday, Tuesday.
That's 3 weeks.
Oh, it's 3 weeks?
Okay, but that's what I wanted to say, is I don't believe, and someone correct me, McClure's office, do they do this modeling? Do they have the ability and to do it? I don't think they do. That's why Chris never did. That's why.
Right, so that's a separate discussion. This
Through
is,
the chair.
Right, but Robin wanted to include it in the motion. I'm saying this should be,
No.
motion number 2 is to go forward with the $15,000 to begin this. And you can start the modeling.
Which we can do that, okay?
Yeah.
The reason the modeling came up, the hydraulic modeling came up was because of Kleinfeld.
Right.
So you're on the right track. Let's
let's tell Chris out first.
that's correct. Let's get Chris out, you see what Chris is gonna do, and move forward with that. Your motion, Gabe, probably has to, I don't know.
Be redone.
Yeah, you probably have to redo it, but
Time-wise, because we're gonna be at the end of the month by the time we meet on the 13th.
I didn't know we were out 3 weeks on a meeting. I'm sorry.
So, did we do selectmen, like, to Ms. Craver's suggestion, on Tuesday?
And that's when we can appoint a special municipal employee.
They can take
And
care of
Chris
that
will
before-
have a decision, obviously. It's
Right.
either-
Then what we'll have to do is just maybe have a special meeting
That's fine.
and, meet with Bader.
if Chris says no.
Correct.
Okay.
Right, so your motion, I think, handles that. So maybe if you want to amend it to say, if Chris doesn't make a decision or Chris says no by our Tuesday upcoming meeting, then you move on to Beta. That's it. That make sense?
Beta or
Whoever you want.
whoever.
You move on. So don't move on to whoever, you just move on.
Okay.
That makes sense? So that Chris will have until Tuesday to decide, and that's when we can
I just
appoint him
need
as special
somebody to
municipal.
get this motion down, so we can take a vote on it.
So I'll make the motion that McClure Engineering, with respect to Chris McClure, has till Tuesday to converse with Robin Craver, the town administrator, in a reasonable assurance with this ethics confusion. And
In his desire.
in his desire to move forward with this project.
And if not, then you will move on to a different.
Yep. And if not, we move on to a different provider.
Everybody good with that?
Yes.
All those-
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Chair votes aye, passes unanimously.
That's what I meant to say originally.
If you just said it at the top, we wouldn't have this 30-minute discussion.
Does that take care of Kleinfelder?
Okay, but.
Well,
Yes.
one question I have is, do you need to have the hydraulic model done to actually be looking at the design?
But so now we're on to 2. So let's,
Okay.
so my suggestion is we read Joe's email, okay? Now we're at Beta's contract, okay? And this comes to Gabe's point of view is where we can cherry pick things with Beta on the order that they're gonna do things for the master plan. I think you have assurances now that they can, do this portion later on, what they propose, so
Before we make a motion, I want to make a statement about master plans, being the only one that works in the public water system. Master plans are a very fluid thing to change, and about every 4 to 5, 6 years, they're gonna have to be updated. I work on a system that is a couple hundred years old at worst, and a few years old at its best. And we go through our master plan on a regular basis, about every 5 years. So whatever money is put forth towards the master plan whether it's hydraulic modeling of what's existing, or looking into what's being built through plans. It's something that is very important to becoming a public water system, whether we're consecutive or we have our own source of water someday in the near future. So don't look at this lightly. There's a lot at the table here. Why you want to break it apart after we had chosen to go down the road of an RFP? Excuse me, I'm not really understanding.
It's the time of it. We're not breaking it apart. I want everything done. It's just.
Well, then,
So
let Beta go through the contract.
So it seems that, you know,
Go on
if
to
we
bid.
approve the contract, you will work with them on the timing of each one of these items, correct? Who's correct?
That's all he clarified it, so
Right.
I'm fine with that.
And also, just to clarify, that this money is all coming from the grant, correct?
So they can go through with their full.
And this is what DEP
So-
recommended.
Right,
that
Mr.
Charlton
Singer,
do.
then Mr. McGrath?
So at this point, what I want to say is probably getting pretty dated. So instead, I'm just going to make a comment, but if yours is fleeting, I'll let you go first. I wrote mine down as notes, so I won't forget.
Does it have to?
Hey,
Mine is
memory
just-
is the first thing to start to go.
And I'm older than you, so. But anyway, thanks, Steve. My question is, just on the vote for motion here, if we're going to approve the contract for Beta, is it going to be both boards jointly, or is it just the water and sewer board?
If,
I think it's just.
I'll make a statement. I believe under all the procurement laws, the chief procurement officer has the final say on everything anyhow.
Well, you already have a contract with them. We have a signed.
Right, there's a signed
Okay.
contract and agreement.
So I think,
It's
but
just-
they were gracious enough to say, I think you're having second thoughts, I'll come back and talk to you.
Right.
That's it. We
So
just
right
want
now
some
you already
clarification.
have-
Right.
Yeah, that's fine.
So you would, so I would imagine it would be your vote to say, yes, we want to go down this path.
But we may need the hydraulic modeling done sooner than later.
First.
Right.
Just
Go ahead.
one additional thing, if you probably want to ask them to pay special attention to the problem that you're having down at the west end of
Yeah.
Route 1.
One quick question, as far as monetary value goes, will DEP pay pay Beta 3 years from now?
No, your grant will be gone. The DEP will be looking at us going, what are you doing? Why are you doing it
Well,
this
this
way?
is what
I
I'm
thought
getting
you
at.
were going to do your master plan and put all this information together. My suggestion
No,
is
no,
just
what I'm
get it
getting at
done.
is if
No.
there's $15,000 of that plan that needs to be done 3 years from now, when every pipe is laid and every, hydrant is flowing and every pump is running, are we on the hook for that, or is that still coming back out of the DEP money? Because there's $77,000 for this total study, which I'm perfectly fine with. I just want to make sure if it's spread over 3 years or 2 years or a year and a half, I just want to make sure he gets paid, or if it's coming out of.
Well, I
out of
would
the funds.
suggest then that you do the work now, and maybe you work it out with Beta that they hold a piece for an update in a
Okay.
piece after, but they get the
But that-
work done,
that's
because that's the
fine.
only way you're gonna get the pay. No, they won't hold it for 3
Okay.
years.
So that's all, I just want to make sure
So,
we
but
get
there's
paid
ways
too.
we can work on,
Right,
work on
you know, I'm
that.
caught on the hook for
Yeah.
money we don't have to waste.
I don't want to do it twice, and I don't want to be caught on the hook. That's my only two concerns.
Those are very reasonable.
Sorry for not wanting to do it twice.
We can just say that they were slow on the punch list. We're holding money.
So
back.
I would ask, Mr. Singer, does your
So-
comments have to address the plan itself?
My comment has to do with everything we're discussing.
Can we, it seems like we're at a motion right now, at a point where we make a motion.
Yes, yes, I'd like
So
to make a
can we
motion.
hear that, and then I'll promise.
Yep.
Good thing you wrote it down.
Yeah,
I know.
So,
I would like to make a motion that we go forward with a portion of the Beta contract, one being the fire flow requirements at $5,740, the hydraulic model at $4,820, and if I may ask Mr. Mackey, is the map creation,
Yes.
is that, as far as the modeling, is that also part of the modeling? Okay, and then including that the total of 3 parts, the map creation for $4,080, for a total of, what did you total, 15,000?
well, hold on, why wouldn't you include the other parts?
Right.
What are the
It's
parts?
the system capability, system
For
historical.
the simple reason.
To approve it, they can work on the top 2 items now,
For the
Mr.
simple
Lemansky. The simple reason is that you have a plan, you work through the plan, and you can stagger these as much as you want. Why would you want to break this apart, Mr. Lemansky? I don't understand, why would you
Okay.
want to do that?
Can I tell you?
Please.
All right. We just heard from Mr. McKenzie, who works in the water system daily, in a huge water system, that between 4, 5, and 6 years, as I wrote down here, they need to upgrade their master plan. We are not going to be completed with our water project here. It's projected somewhere between 2.5 and 3 years. So why would we want to do all of these things here, and then would then be 2 years, we've got to update the master plan? So that's why.
We have a grant to cover this.
Associated with all the work coming.
Yeah,
Doesn't
this is
matter where the
all
money's
these-
coming from. We don't need to spend money.
The master plan will incorporate all Kleinfelder's work. So your 4, 5, and 6 that you wrote down will come after all construction is complete.
This is the reason, again, as far as my motion goes, it's 1, 2, and 3. I'll be looking for a second on that.
Fire flow map creation and hydraulic model, those are the three?
Mr. Mackey, quick question.
Yes.
With those other 3 items,
Well, it goes on to the
Yeah.
next page too, you guys.
well,
Yeah.
all the items, I imagine the reports, the meetings, the capital management improvement plans, all these are meshed together. There's some parts that maybe a small component of system history and current status that is involved in the modeling plan or something. So maybe you're not spending all $8,540 out of that line item, maybe you're spending $1,000. So by authorizing all these things, if you don't get to it, you don't get to it. Mr. Pecos, Mr. McGrath.
Just a reminder to the commission and to the board,
Second.
the master plan, the RFP, was not written for the purpose of allowing you to install or comment on the ExxonMobil loop plan. The hydraulic model is directly on point to allowing you to do that, okay, just the hydraulic model. Everything else in there is specifically prescribed by DEP in Worcester in order to allow you to be able to file an application to become a consecutive water system in June, July of this year. If you want to be a consecutive water system, you have to do all that work, not because I say so, but because they said so. And all that, again, is lifted right out of the letter from 2007 when they said this is what you got to do to be consecutive, and it's lifted directly out of their regulation. If you don't want to be a public water supply come June or July, then the bulk of the work in there you don't have to do.
Mr. McGrath?
Just in more, because I don't know this, but the items for the master plan, from what I gather from Alex, has experience with this, is that you need it anyway. Okay? It's, and I put this akin to the master plan that the planning board does, Rob, but ours is out for 2 years. If you want grant money, that's usually the carrot that or the stick that the state uses to get you to do things, okay? Their first question is, do you have a master plan? I don't think it's any different in the water and sewer business. So if you go looking for a grant.
Just to help you again, you are not a water system at the current time. Everybody understands that, right? Okay. In order to be a water system, you have to have a master plan, as Alex said.
Right.
If it is your intention to become a water system, then you must have a master plan. They won't give you the permit, and they give the permit that says
But even
public water supply number
even for us
5993B, whatever. So if you want to be a public water system come June or July, in order to capture all that revenue and do all those other things you told me 100 times you want to do, then you have to do all of this, not pieces of it. Every single piece.
And
Take
just-
out any single thing in here, and you put that in jeopardy, because this is the list. DEP did,
Correct.
not me. The list I did was much bigger, and they winnowed it down to the one that's in the RFP, which is now in the contract.
So I just want to
So
reiterate.
if you don't want to be a public water supply in June or July, you don't need to do anything except the hydraulic one. But if you do, you need to do the whole thing. It's
So is
simple
that a
as
segue into to deciding, do you want to become a public water system before the Exxon begins their construction?
Well, Mr. Mansky made a motion.
Is there a second?
I don't believe anybody
A
said.
second. Motion dies.
So, all right, so I guess it might be a segue into that.
this was kind of what me and you know, talked about the other night, which is, there's another whole caveat to this. And this was the part I was trying to get to was, there's a huge decision. And is chasing that 150,000, Kevin is 100% right. We need to start doing all this stuff right in line and go. If we're not chasing that 150,000, 200,000, you know, worth of connection fees,
Why such a
then,
small,
what's
small
that?
amount for connection fees?
Tell me there's more.
How many people are on the loop to be tied in?
Mr. Pecos?
Just understand, there's a lot more money at stake here than 150,000. Let's say that's 75 connections, because a connection fee is $2,000. Now, if you don't become a public water supply on or around July 1st, when the mains or people can start connecting, then the connection fee goes to Southbridge.
We get 15%, or
15.
is it 25 or
I thought it was
15?
25.
Yeah, you get 25%.
You get some portion of it.
Right. But they get the 75, you get the 25. Now, those connection fees are important because they're a large amount of money potentially. If you assume that a certain percent of all the possible users will connect in that first year, and that adds up to 75, it is very much the case that if you talk to any public water supply system, when a water main goes by, eventually everybody connects. It is never the case that you do not get 100% connection.
Never drove like this year.
Right. So it may be the case that in the first year you get 75 to connect, in the second year you get 80, and et cetera, et cetera. But in order to compute the actual value of those connection fees, you've got to know first exactly how many connections are, potential connections are there, and assume that number of connections times 2,000 is what you're going to get for revenue. Now, you may get that over 3 years, 5 years, 1 year. Also assume that over time those connection fees are going to go up. They're not going to stay at 2,000. So the amount of revenue dealing is large. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. That's a tiny little fraction.
Can I
of
add
revenue.
one opinion?
Well, let me finish, Gabe, because this is important that you guys
No, it
understand
is.
this. You've also got the sale of water that every one of those connections represents. When you add up the connection fees, the sale of water, and other potential revenues, depending upon how you structure your water rate, because remember, in your regulations, you've already got betterment fees, you've already got privilege fees, you've already got special revenue fees. So you've got all sorts of potential to create wealth with those connections. You're looking at worst case scenario, first year that you take over the water system from Southbridge, well in excess of $1 million, well in excess. Second, third year, depends how big the system gets and how much you collect. Also, as has been pointed out earlier this evening, you have a whole part of town that Southbridge refuses to supply. If you ever hope to supply that part of town, you can only do it by becoming a public water supply.
Where do you get $1 million?
All of the revenue from all the water users, plus all the connection fees and other ancillary fees that you might charge, is going to be a very, very big number.
I think that's high.
I think you're looking at Robin probably got it in her office, but I think you're looking at 300,000 or 400,000 in water revenue now. Is that right? And that's before any of the.
Yeah, so 300,000-400,000 minus 200,000 to operate it. And you
Oh,
start
no,
each-
I'm not talking.
No, but this is what I'm getting.
Yeah,
Can I just state a quick
I'm not talking
opinion?
operating costs yet. All I'm
Can I
talking
just
is
state
gross revenue.
I'm going to state a quick opinion.
I just don't want you to think that 150,000 is what's at stake here. It's much, much bigger than that.
And it's much worse too, because here's the thing. I am part of this industry, not so much the water. Alex, you're in it. I was in it a while ago. I'm in the other side. My personal opinion, and I'll state this for the record, I do not think that we are ready to run and operate a water system in 6 months from our office. And I will state that for myself. I do not know if the board is in agreement with me, but for myself, and being in this business, that I don't think we're in a good position to run and maintain a brand-new operating water system within 6 months.
And to kind of bring that together, the information that would help decide that and to help organize that is this master plan. which I'll reiterate again, is being paid for by a grant.
I agree with that 100%.
And I just think, okay, that you're probably better off to have the master plan in hand, okay? Especially since it is grant funded, okay? And I know, Rob, you don't want to hear where the money's coming from now, but I think that it's common sense to have the master plan in hand, just in case you decide that you want it. It's gonna be a document that you want anyway.
Absolutely.
At the end of the day, whether we run a system or we don't want to run a system, you're gonna want to have this document, and you are gonna want to update it.
So, just to keep things going forward, let's deal with the master plan as proposed and find a direction with that. I think.
I'll make a motion. We've already, well, just real quick, and I'm gonna make the motion. We've already approved this to go ahead, okay? Right, we've already approved this, we were just, waiting for Robin, we've talked about this. My motion is that Beta start work on this project, comes to our meeting next Tuesday to clarify the order of this master plan, and we can discuss in our board.
Next Tuesday's board selection,
I mean, the next scheduled meeting.
February 13th.
So you can get started now, you know from this meeting to start on modeling,
So your motion is a motion to proceed.
motion to proceed.
Supposed to proceed, and then there's just discussion, and it's just part of,
So that gives you 3 weeks to get the stuff we talked about, which the hydraulic modeling, and then our next scheduled meeting,
February 13th.
February 13th, we can discuss further, breaking this bid down and how we're gonna achieve it.
which is standard operating procedures, I imagine.
Correct.
So, to the motion, do I have a second? Got a second? Any discussion?
So if I understand, the motion is, we're really not jumping in the pool, just sticking a foot in.
No, they're gonna go forward on the contract from the RFP,
And you're gonna guide them on how
Right.
you want that done.
starting with the fire flows.
Okay, so then what you're gonna do is, if you wanna be able to go forward with the contract, but you would be fine, Mr. Mackey, with this cherry picking possibility?
Time
Setting the order.
We're not cherry picking what you're doing, we're
You're
just.
setting the order.
Exactly.
Which is how we would want to do it
All right,
anyways.
setting the order, but going forward with the entire contract.
Correct.
To $76,500.
Correct.
Okay, it's clear.
All right, got a motion, a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
I'll go forward with it. Aye.
Chair votes aye, passes unanimously.
Thank you, I know it's kind of a very divisive topic, and I appreciate, that's why we come here, because, we have to remember, we are all on one team. We are on Team Charlton, we want the best for our town. So I appreciate that, and if, Deborah's, clear, we're all people who are so passionate, we all love this. We're here at 8:30 because we care about the town, we love what we're doing. So thank you, I just want to thank everyone again for, coming together. It's not easy. If it was easy, it wouldn't be fun.
And that's why I want to tell you, I want to make sure that you're on the, if we don't think we can handle it in 6 months, I don't want the town going down a road, chasing a carrot that.
I made a promise to Mr. Singer. I will let Mr. know.
At this point, anything I had to say is probably moot. I will simply put out something I hope everyone will take to heart, a mindset that I hope we share, and I hope if they don't share it, they will consider sharing it going forward. Going back to Mr. Berthium's puzzle analogy. Mr. Pecos, how much would it cost the town if we screw up?
To what, I'm sorry?
If we screw up, if we didn't do a water model, we did the old water model, what's the cost of a mistake? $100, $1,000, hundreds of thousands of dollars?
If you assume that 75 people are going to hook up the first year, then a decision not to become a public water supply would cost you $150 less 30,000 or 35,000. So that's your number, about it costs about 120.
But if we go and we build out the puzzle and we find out we made a mistake, if we used the wrong water model, we got to tear it all up, it's not cheap to fix that mistake.
Different question.
But that was the question I was trying to ask.
If you didn't do the hydraulic model and you didn't have your consulting engineer able to comment on the design of ExxonMobil, then it could, and the design is based on an erroneous hydraulic model. And it could be a design feature which could be very, very wrong, and that could cost you hundreds of thousands or millions to fix later.
Thank you.
So hydraulic models are, I mean, no disrespect for anybody in the room, because I'm gonna include myself in this. There's no room in there for amateurs. You've got to have licensed engineers doing that work, because it's just way too sophisticated. And bear in mind, a hydraulic model is an electronic picture of the water system at a moment in time. As soon as the hydraulic model is done, the next day it changes, because the pipes calcify, all sorts of things happen, which is why you got to update them periodically. Now, I'm not saying it isn't good for a period of time, but it's a picture in time. Once the loop's done, you probably want to update it again. But the question I wanted to ask, if I can now.
Okay.
Well, I just heard what to me is a mind-boggling statement. I'm sorry, I'm just almost blown away sitting here. For 7 months I worked with you fellas, and the drumbeat was, Charlton is gonna be a consecutive water system come July 1st on or about next year.
Hopes.
And I've been gone out of here for like 2
Listen
weeks now.
to yourself, Kevin. Sorry.
Well, that's what I heard you fellas say over and over and over at every meeting. And I just heard you say that you don't think, you're not sure you want to do that anymore, because what I want to say to you, the master plan, all the work you had me do on the water side was all geared toward that conclusion. And even if what you lose the first year is only $150,000, and that assumes that only 75 buck up, you might have a lot more buck up, because we don't know how many are going to buck up.
So
The amount of revenue that Charlton loses is very substantial, even if it's only 150.
So Mr. Singer is waiting patiently. I'll let him finish his
That's fine.
his thought.
But Mr. Pecos, you're helping me make one of my points was, Charlton, and I hope you'll just keep this in mind with all of your decisions going forward, and all of our decisions going forward. You know, if you build a puzzle and you find you're missing a piece, or you build a puzzle wrong and start all over again, it could be a massive waste of time and money. There are certain things that have to be done, period. New hydraulic model, master plan. And sometimes, and I'm the one who says it, I'm saying it right now on TV, if it costs more money to do it right now, it's gonna save us money, because I'd rather spend an extra $4,000 or $50,000 today that saves you from a potential $500,000 screw up down the road. So it's important that we not be short-sighted. I'm not saying anybody, but I want you guys to hopefully keep this in mind when we make these decisions. Sometimes we have to spend more money up front to ensure we don't spend more money later. Because this town, I won't start listing out all the examples of this town, putting the cart before the horse and getting screwed royally. Where we try and do it really cheap up front, and then we get really painted out the back door. So I would rather we go into this, hire the right people, hire the right management people to be overseeing this, and just get it done right. Being our own water source has been the water grail we've been after forever. I personally have been chasing that grail for 16 years. And I know you all together probably 100 years we've been chasing that grail. I really don't want to see it get screwed up now.
Yeah, and just one clarification. I think Mr. Briggs was saying that he wasn't sure if he was ready to become a public water supplier in 6 months, correct? And it's something, if we don't, in 6 months, we might lose on some money, but we can eventually become a water supplier in a year and a half, if it finds out that we can't do it in that short amount of time. So does that, it seems like we want to become a public water supplier.
I got that off my chest, yeah.
That's what we had voted on.
Right.
But that's what we want,
Right.
yes.
And then maybe 6 months, we don't know. That is possible. And that's why we're doing this research, that's why we have all these smart people in the room.
I think it's important that we bear in mind that if for whatever reason the opportunity is
Exactly.
comes up, that we have all these pieces in
So that,
place.
that we're in a good position to proceed.
So we are in a position.
There is a tremendous responsibility with running our own water system.
Absolutely.
And going back to Mr. Cago's point, and all of this is not something to take lightly. I've been in this stuff, I've worked on it. That's all I'm saying. I just want to make sure we do it right.
And I don't understand what's the
And I don't think the DEP is gonna guide us down a road that
I know.
To Mr. Singer's point, and Dave, I agree with you, is we don't want the independence, we want to be able to have our own source and be the operator. The problem is we don't have a source. So the current source comes from Southbridge. If we become a consecutive water supplier, our source still comes from Southbridge. We still have to pay for the water that comes into town. Once it comes into town, then we are totally responsible for all of the expenses and all of the water losses that we may have by leaks. And when you go and look at it from that point of view, that the differential of what we possibly could negotiate for a discount on the water rate to what we would have left over relative to the costs, that any upside on, and we've done the betterment numbers, we know how many possible units there are out there who can connect. And the numbers between maximum 150 to 180,000. Once we get that, which would be fine, but the problem is that our cost, our operating deficiencies, and we will be at a deficiency day one, because our expenses will exceed our income after we pay for the water. Because the wholesale differential is not going to be large enough to give us that amount of money.
Yep.
So that 150 or 180 we got in the bank, we're going to be sucking off that to take care of our differentials. So at this point in time, I'm in agreement with Mr. Berthium's beginning statement. It's just, this isn't the time to become a public water operator at this point in time.
So, Mr. Singer wants to say something, but before that, I just want to make a point. Have we done a financial analysis?
It had been done back in 2007 by SEA.
So that's 10 years ago. So I feel like.
Well, I'll tell you, I think 10 years ago, that's when we had the crash in 07. So things haven't gone up.
I believe part of the RFP for the master plan has some financial stuff.
So, and the master plan says, hey, that's a bad idea, don't do it. Then
It
we
was
listen to that.
between 130 and 150,000 is what it was going to cost back then.
Right.
And we have, as far as consumer price index, we've had a little increase.
So that makes complete sense, but I think going forward, we need, kind of like the model, we need a financial model. Mrs. Singer?
Just very quickly, and I'm not going to debate the point, I'm just going to throw it out there. The discussion has taken place in the past about finding water sources. And there are other people, besides myself, who have been here for a long time who agree there are potential other water sources we could find right here in Charlton. And I'll leave that at that. That's a separate discussion. But I would like Mr. Pecos's feedback, because just on the numbers, just watching him, I want to hear his opinion on those numbers, if he's willing to.
And I just want to make sure, it's getting later, that we still have, one thing that we have here as a tool to go through all of our things that probably is being addressed in here. And that information is important, but I think just to, get things back on track, just to kind of bring things back together, nice orderly discussion, I want to, without objection, go back to this and start going through this, and as a group, we'll find what we want to do. Mr. Berthium?
One thing I think both these boards need to do is figure out whether we want to be a consecutive water system or not. And I think this is the paramount issue that comes on a financial risk to the town. And we can make the recommendation, but you guys kind of represent the town. So this group and maybe a couple more of these meetings,
right,
we need to figure out this direction.
Right.
And whether it's financial analysis from Kevin, wherever it comes from, this is a financial decision.
Exactly, and still, we don't have the information for it. I think if it's safe
We
to
got
say,
a lot of it.
We have a lot, what is it?
How current is it?
Oh, how current, that's still, and we have.
We don't even have a water rate yet, so how can we even?
And that's, I know Mr. Lemansky, that was a big thing with him, was.
The only thing.
How can we run a consecutive water system if we don't know what we're going to end up paying for the water?
And that's a completely legitimate point.
And I know that's been a sticking point with Rob. So
Every other consecutive water system in the state is cost plus.
But here's what it
is.
Here's the thing, okay?
I hope
and
you
I
get
know
that.
where Joe's going. Let's, if we can, just take a look at this matrix that we have, and I think that
the only we started going backwards on the list of 5 things. And there's still one more thing to go over on that.
That's this.
Yeah, that's this. Number 1, Kevin Pecos pending project list. That is this broken down into a nice orderly square grids of progress. But yeah, so absolutely, there's so much information that we still need to see before we decide that, and that's a big decision. I totally agree with that. That's very valid. So, we want to start with water or sewer first? Start with sewer. Go right down. So the sewer rate study, with the present rate, same operations and capital. The tasks include review needs, develop scope, bid out, manage contract, make adjustment in rates. What priority is that? Is that high priority, low priority, or we can defer it to later?
No, it's in the sewer end of things, the rate study needs to get done.
Yep.
Something that.
So
the
number 1?
rates Out of,
1, 2, or 3. 1's like now, 2.
yeah, it's a
or 4.
priority, I would say. It's something we've talked about for the last 3 years.
It's a priority.
I'd say that's 1.
It doesn't say much for us if it's been a priority for 3 years. It hasn't been done.
It's something that needs.
I think it's a 2, but go ahead. You want to
Rob,
put
you
it as a
think 2? Because you can't have a whole bunch of ones.
No,
Hey, here's the
here's
thing, okay? Everybody's seen this, I believe, and they've read this once already. What do we have for like your number 1 priority? There's a couple of things here, billing issues. I'd say that's a 1.
I think we got to
Yeah, but
mostly.
The reason I
Or is
say
it
this,
complete?
the rate study is a 1. 1 we've touched on. We haven't been able to accomplish it in-house. It's something that needs to go outside to get done.
Okay.
And it's been so long. And I know a lot of the billing issues we've had in the past have been either brought to light or straightened out to some degree.
You get your question.
So, when we say it's a priority, we can each do 1 or 2, so it's someone we want to work on.
Is this a priority though for both boards?
No, it's not us.
You know what I mean? I want to
Which
just
one are you
make sure
talking
why
about?
we're together.
Because if we have to offer you assistance in some way, shape, or form, such as with the billing, which we've been doing,
Okay.
we want to know what we
Okay.
have to do. Do we need to give you some financial support? Do we have to go town meeting, the warrants open now?
Right.
Okay?
Okay.
Do we have to-
No, that
Yeah,
makes
no,
sense.
No, that's why, and.
I just
you know
wanna
what?
maximize this.
No, and sometimes, rather than five people working on it, another 5 helping, with a different set of eyes can help too.
Yeah, you guys are the experts, so we don't want to step on top, we just want to make sure, this is a huge project.
Yeah.
We want to make sure things, we have the people and the mechanisms in place to make things work. Which, I think maybe is a good segue to talk about, we have, $100,000 a year to have someone to manage, an administrator. And I think one of your comments were that we don't have plans, so we don't want to have an administrator in place.
What's that?
That you said that you didn't want to have a water administrator, sewer administrator in place, working on your goals because you didn't have goals.
We need to clarify the goals.
Correct.
Right.
So, no, couple things. Mr. Pecos showed us some of our deficiencies down in that office. One of the major deficiencies down in that office is adequate help. We were short a secretary, we got a new secretary, we haven't seen her long enough, but so far she's doing great. We really need some higher level expertise down there. So we need to clarify whether it's subcontracted through a Mr. Pecos or something to that degree, or if we're just gonna hire, somebody in-house for a lot less.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely, and,
So-
I think one comment that, Ms. Gerber?
I'm smiling on your, a lot less. So one of the things I did ask Kevin to do for tonight, assuming that this was gonna be a part of the discussion, was to take a look at if he is, wanted to come back and continue. What does that cost, and what is he doing, what is his time look like? Because that was something that both boards met with him and to find out what he could do and what he couldn't do. And that's part of what I think this matrix is, to see, is there things in here that you still want him to do? And did you put some paperwork or something together to talk to the commission about?
I wrote some notes and I've got them with me. I wasn't able to get it on a piece of paper to be able to hand out, but let me just say this to you. I charged you a certain rate last year because that was the amount, because I'm a municipal retiree. I'm allowed to make a certain amount and I'm allowed to make it over 960 hours. And there's no flexibility. So I just took that amount divided by 960, there's the hourly rate. What I will also tell you is that last year, for personal reasons, it was very important to me to max out as best I could on that money. Well, I had a wedding to pay for, there you go. We all been there, we know the pain. If you haven't, God bless you. But it's a lot less important to me now. At the same time that I worked for Charlton last year, I worked for 6 other communities and I didn't charge them a dime because I had what I was allowed to make here. Making all that money is not important to me now that I'm retired. I've got my...
You can pay me for his work then.
Yeah, I know. This is on camera too. Oh boy, I'm gonna get that. What's important to me is doing good work. You know, I don't, you know, I'm too young to fully retire, guys. I mean, that's the truth of it. My wife still works. I'm bored at home. So there's only so many conversations you can have with the dog. So I want to work. Money's not a problem. I don't really care, within reason, what the rate is. It doesn't have to be what it was last year. I gave a lot of thought to what Robin asked me to give thought to. I have a chart over there, was all prepared to show you what $91.52 actually compares to, because it's what's called it's not a loaded rate, there's no pension in there, there's no health insurances and all that stuff. And believe it or not, when you do that comparison, 91's not a lot of money, because it actually spins down to about 40-something an hour. When you take out all the things you don't have to pay. But even at that, I don't honestly care. It's about the work. I love the work.
Mr. Singer?
If you guys have work you need help with and you want me to do it, I'm happy to do it. But to be perfectly candid with you, if your goal is not to become a consecutive water supplier at some reasonable time in the near future, and remember I said all along I couldn't guarantee July, but I could guarantee over the summer, by like September. And I can absolutely guarantee you sitting here that by September you can be a consecutive water supplier. You can. But if that's not your goal, you don't need me. There's really not a lot I can do, because the biggest thing that has to get done in terms of engineering, we've got Beta to do it. That's what we put that contract in. The other big piece is the finances. That's where I come in. That's what I'm an expert at. In fact, the RFP says right in it that Beta will file in the paperwork to become a public water supplier a financial plan which the interim controller will write. They are not under contract to write that. That was to be given to them. That's in their contract. So if I can do that work for you, I'm happy to do it. But if that's not your goal, then you don't need me or anybody else to do it, frankly. And I know I'm talking myself out of a job here, and that's okay.
Mr. Singer?
So,
Then Mr. McGrath.
I can't speak for other selectmen, I can't speak for anyone on water sewer. That's my goal. Looking at this sheet, I can tell everyone here, without hesitation, I would like to see Mr. Pecos stay. I think that what he has brought to the table is invaluable. I have sat with him at the meetings, the joint meetings we've had. He brings to the table knowledge not shared by anyone else in this room. It's a unique skill set none of us have.
And
That is invaluable. I just wanted to have that comment out there, and I think that, for me, I hear in the business world and so many other places, yeah, but who I can get for less? And you always wind up paying a price, because the person who comes in for less money almost inevitably also comes in with less knowledge and less experience. And you're still, it's like the argument I made before about, let's pay less up front, but you're gonna wind up paying more later. Mr. Pecos, to me, is a key part of this moving forward.
And Mr. Singer, to add on to that, and to use Mr. Mansky's example of Chris McClure, of a reason why he's so valuable for this, because he has such institutional knowledge of the project and all the work that's going on. Mr. Pecos knows what's going on. And it seems like it's a very good fit. Mr. McGrath?
I'm going to take the personality out of it. What I'm going to say is just from looking at this, from being a manager for a long time, there's a lot of things that need to be done here. I see things that require ones, and I don't see personally anybody on your staff right now, okay, that has the time or to do it, okay, the capability. So, and I think that was one of the discussions that I've had with a couple of people one-on-one, And the answer was that we didn't have any goals, okay? There was no goals and objectives that, you know, and I know Paul, you know, when he talked about it, he was saying, you know, let's do it for, you know, let's bring somebody back for a month, and we'll you know, we'll give them things to do. I think with this matrix, okay, if you prioritize what you want to do, and how you know, who's gonna do it, I think that you have more than enough work to have somebody do it, okay? That's my own opinion.
And in addition, you know, having someone there to help you set those goals that you plan to work with would also behoove you as well.
Can I add one thing? We need to figure out what we're doing with water, because if we figure out what we're doing with water, we're not going down that road, yes, we can easily handle all this sewer stuff and start nipping it in the bud. But you're right, this is a huge monumental task. You're right, it's probably more than Kevin, you know, the four of us at $100 a month and, you know, 2 meetings.
Hey, they get paid that much money?
Princely some.
You know what I'm saying? And we all, you know, throw in time and effort and everything. No, that's what we're here for. We're here for service.
We care.
Absolutely. So, you know, maybe it takes another meeting or two, but we really need to figure this out, and we need to figure out with, come September, if the water rate is higher, are we still going with it? Is the water rate low? Are we still going with it? You know, there's some economics there with the town that we need to face, and I'm not forward going, I'm all forward with going with this direction. Please do not take that I am not forward going this direction, okay? The one thing I do not want to see is come September, we take over water from Southbridge and we are in a bad spot.
Exactly.
And we just put 20% on top of every water fee. You have such a good IMA that you guys did a fantastic job with.
Will you guys help with that too? Or is it a team effort?
You know, we have a deal that is phenomenal. So that's all. So
You could become a consecutive water system, you could have all the permits, and you could choose not to act on it until you're ready and get all your ducks in order, so.
if it's in 5 years,
Because you've got to.
do we spend all that money again? And this is what I roll back to
Right.
4 hours ago.
So, Mr.
And
Bird,
you could find that when, as Exxon hooks up, and if they do Masonic Home first, you could find that you have a well there that you might be able to bring online fairly easily with the help of Viola, so you're not stuck. I mean, nobody has a crystal ball to know.
So yeah, not to kind of go off in the weeds, just, yeah, as it is getting later on. Just having someone, like you said, financials are so huge. Having an expert, a guru in finance on your team helping you develop those goals and figure out what's going on, now, even on a short-term basis, a short-term contract, that seems like a no-brainer.
I guess my question is, we made the vote to a consecutive, I don't understand why.
No. We made the vote to explore the option
Did
of.
we not send a letter to Southbridge?
We gave them,
Which you had to do anyway. You had to pull
We
the
had to
trigger.
give them notice that,
subject to.
So,
subject to a favorable rate, which
And then
was
you were
6
going
months
to
in.
do all those pieces, so that
And we're
you know
about to
what
go
a
on
favorable
vacation.
rate
Right.
is. You still
I'm
don't
just
know
saying
that.
that the ducks are falling in a bad row.
I
Right, so,
think they're following the way. I think we've got them lined up better than maybe you think we've got them
Okay.
lined up.
but it seems like we need, Mr. Lemansky?
The chances of us becoming a consecutive water system in 2017 is 50-1. They're that bad.
why?
Why?
Yeah.
Because it's going to be financially, a financial disaster if we do that.
Mr.
And
Lemansky, you mentioned the financial disaster. If you know, you spend 2 months and you do a financial analysis, and you said, yes, this is going to be a financial disaster, and Beta said, yes, it's a financial disaster, you have your finance guru say, yes, it's a financial disaster, then absolutely wouldn't do it. But we don't know that right away. That's an unknown, Mr. Lemansky.
Can I? Hold on.
I go.
Here's what we do know, is we have a solid basis, or at least I have a solid basis for making that statement, based on being down there for 8.5 years, knowing what the Southbridge water rate is, and knowing what other communities end up negotiating. And the thing is if we get any discount from Southbridge, that would be great, all right? But the thing is, that discount is not gonna match our expenses and the cost of the water and the risk of the sole risk. If we have a leak, if we have a blowout or whatever, we're responsible not only to fix it, we're responsible for all the water that we lost because it's gonna be metered at the corner of Snake Hill Road and Route 169. And the thing that Mr. Pecos put together here, I mean, it's great. It's great that he listed all these things. But over the 6 months that he was here, what I do know now is he can't go to Southbridge. Southbridge will not have any discussions with Mr. Pecos relative to water. And that was written by the Southbridge town manager on July 22nd. In the future, the town of Southbridge underlined, will not be discussing any issues that relate to our water system with Mr. Pecos.
Okay, so we
So
already.
the thing is if we want our hiree to go to Southbridge and negotiate for a rate, he can't go. If we
I
want
wouldn't be recommending that you have him do it anyway.
But
And
the-
I would recommend that you continue having
the
him do
upsetting
that
part of it,
because
Mr.
we've
Chairman,
got
was
many
if
moving
we
parts.
Please, everyone, one at a time.
If we knew this in July, we would have had a whole other different perspective. How many times did you participate in the meeting and I'm saying, let's go to Southbridge and have that meeting? You, on December 19th, sat in the chair and said, you people must think I'm a fool, that I haven't already been there and already discussed it with Heather and with Ron as far as the water rate. If you did that, then ethics is going to be talking to you.
Before we get
didn't do
to any
that,
personal,
and you're telling stories.
Mr. Lemansky, before we get to the personal thing, I want
Yeah.
to just try to
But
keep
this-
it on a topic of discussion.
Yes.
Mr. McGrath,
Through the chair. Rob,
Yes.
looking at this, okay? Take the water rate negotiation out of this. You have more work here to do, and you don't have the people to do it. And right now, you're digging yourself a hole down there, a big, deep hole. We had a problem with billing in the sewer department, okay? Where the town, we had to take somebody from our office to go down and help straighten it out. We had a problem with the tax collector, who I had a personal chit chat with, who was very upset that she had to spend the hours that she had to do to straighten this out, okay? There's a lot of issues down there that need to be straightened out. Nobody here, because we're basically a volunteer operation, okay? And nobody in the town can fairly ask anybody here to be down there 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week. There's a lot of things that need to be done, Rob. And these priorities, they have to be listed out, and you have to make people responsible to do them, okay? We're willing to help, okay? We're absolutely willing to help. Your plate is full. Whether you're a consecutive water system or not, there's issues that need to be taken care of, okay? And that's why when we've had separate discussions about this, it's been get some priorities and goals in place, decide who's gonna do them, and then get the person in place to do them. I don't care who the person is. I personally don't care. There's a lot of stuff that needs to be done. Okay, this thing with Kleinfelder that's been dragging and dragging and dragging, that should never have gotten to this, okay?
We lost our engineer, John. We lost our engineer.
You didn't lose your engineer.
Yes, we did.
No, you didn't.
excuse me,
We
I'm
did.
going, order please.
Here's the problem, okay?
He was threatened.
One person at a time, please.
Here's the problem, Rob,
Yeah.
okay? The engineer was told to go to ethics 2 months ago. 2 months ago. Nothing happened. Nothing, okay? We find out that we have plans that we have to go through, that we don't have an updated hydraulics study on. You can't let this thing drag and drag. And I know you've put a ton of effort into it. Everybody here has. But the reason we have this chat in front of us is to get some priorities and some goals in place, okay? And everybody agree. And then hire whoever you're gonna hire and use the money that's available and get it done. That's what's gonna happen.
Let's, as an example, let's go to number 2 on sewer. Issues regarding capacity. Is there a concern that we have oversold capacity? And as Robin had read that first.
Can I just stop
Capacity
for just a
due to
minute?
operations.
Order, please.
That were
I just wanna find out if you have-
Stop, hold on, Rob.
Excuse me, Rob, please. Ms. Graver
I
is
just
a.
want to ask you,
Yeah.
Beta is, I've
What's that?
seen a wink and a face, can I go now? Do you have any other questions for them that have to do with engineering? They're all set?
All set.
All set, we'll see you
They're-
next.
I'll communicate with them on what's
Yeah.
happening with Chris, and they're gonna do the water master plan anyway.
Yeah.
So, thank you. Thank you for sitting through this.
Making sausage is ugly, trust me. And Rob and I are good friends, and we have these discussions all the time.
Bob, thank you very much.
Can I ask,
I just make a point here. Number 2, the issue of oversold. If you have knowledge of sewer, all right, if sewer if capacity is available and someone knocks on your door, other than the moratorium we have in place, we cannot refuse them.
Correct.
Okay? And the thing is, there's reference in whether it's in here or it's in Mr. Pecos's 26 points, is that we have to be saving space for those who pay bad betterments. That's a fallacy, is we don't have to save space. If we had to save space, we would have closed the doors 7 years ago.
Okay, but that's the question.
Well, no, but first of all, is the question that came up is an improper question for the lack of knowledge. And the thing is as eloquent and as so verbose that Mr. Pecos is, and also he put a
It's not
good
about-
plan.
it's-
He doesn't
get
have the knowledge of water and sewer.
Rob.
He doesn't
get-
have it.
Rob,
Yes.
get off that and get back to my main thing,
Okay.
okay? My main thing is, you need to get goals set, goals and objectives, okay? So as we go through this, if the water and sewer department says number 2 is a non-issue, okay? And we put that down as a 3, then we know we don't have to have anybody do that task. What we're trying to do here is get to what needs to be done, okay? So it doesn't, I understand where you're coming from and stuff, but it just, we need to set the goals and objectives. Who's gonna handle it? If 2's a non-issue, we put it down as a 3.
All right, Mr. Bertheum.
I have one question that hopefully will end all of this. Are we ready to spend $150,000 irregardless of the outcome of the water stuff?
Aren't we already given that money from Exxon for that purpose?
This is a town issue. And
I don't know.
it's gonna cost us $150,000 between consultants, engineers, to get a lot of this information that we need to go consecutive. Okay, whether or not we get a good rate or not. So come September, this all might come to play, and the rate might be terrible, and it goes up 20% for the town residents, and we say no. So, as the 7 of us here, are we gonna say that we're gonna spend that $150,000 to make this work, irregardless of the outcome?
Mr. Pecos?
Do you follow what I'm saying? That we gotta invest money to figure out the outcome of the rate, of where we're gonna be. So in September,
We talking about water or sewer?
water. Because this is the most important issue between the 2 of us that we have.
Was also other issues beyond.
There's a ton of them, but this is a huge one that I'd love to know because I will gladly focus my energy in that
One word that
direction.
he used that was the right word, invest, because that's what we have to do.
Mr. Pecos, did you have an answer to
Well, and
that?
one of the good things is we
Robin?
don't have to find the money.
Well-
I mean, it's not like we're
Right.
trying to do something
Okay.
and we don't even know where the money's
So if
from.
we're okay, if you 3 representing, or the town of Charlton, the people here, okay, say, you know what, 150,000, we might lose, but we're gonna go with the gamble of we might gain. If you're okay with that, then we'll go down that road, knowing that we might not have the outcome we want.
Mr. Pecos, you had a comment?
Do you follow what I'm saying?
I've heard a lot of conversation about the financing of the department and how much money we can make and how much money we can't make. I don't need to go to Southbridge and have a conversation with them in order to produce a financial plan for the department. All I need to do is make some reasonable assumptions about what it is they currently do, and I know what that is because that's all listed in the IMA, and look at their public water rate analysis, which breaks down every single thing and backs it into the rate. So all I need is those two documents and I can calculate it. Others can have the conversation with them about what Southbridge is and is not willing to do. But I can compute the finances no problem. What I will tell you folks is that when you're making as big and as important a public policy decision as does the town want to become a public water supply or not, you don't do it on the basis of assumptions. You have that sophisticated analysis done. You deal in facts, absolutely incontrovertible facts on a piece of paper. I will tell you, having done very, very preliminary analysis, you are a lot closer than you think to being able to fully fund a water department at around $500,000 a year annually, about the same as your sewer department. You're a lot closer than you think. Second thing I will tell you is that you've got 2 water supplies. I think, optimistically, could be online pumping water in 18 months. Pessimistically, 2 years. But for every month you delay the steps that are, and I'll explain where they are here. Simple. And you'll say, oh yeah, you're right.
I don't want to go down that road.
Yeah, so I see, yeah.
Here's the point. If you develop those supplies, and if I'm correct in what I'm saying, and I have an engineer that said it, not me, a groundwater exploration expert, it's all in the memo I wrote.
DEP approval process on
Let-
the grounds
let
of
me
farm
finish.
well is 3 to 5 years.
That's not
So
correct.
How?
For over 100,000.
I understand that. I think we're both getting,
Said it.
we're all
That's
getting
why I
off
don't wanna
track.
go down that
So
road.
let's not go down that road, Mr. Pecos. But to answer your question about investing the $150,000, a big chunk of that money, if not all of it, it's already earmarked and given to us by ExxonMobil. A big part of that. Anything more, like Mr. Singer says, that's an investment I would make every day of the week.
I think, Gabe, we have to do, it's due diligence.
Absolutely.
So, and I agree with you.
Yeah, I think
You
it's-
know,
I think
how
we're
we
all the same.
move-
I just think you need to know that the outcome might not be what we want.
And if it is, it's money that we have to spend to find out
Okay.
if it's capable. But, you know, more to my point, I still think that we need to prioritize what needs to happen. You know, and whether we do it at this meeting tonight, or everybody takes a look at this and at home and writes down what they want to do. I'm a great one for lists. And I think we need to come up with one here. And I think the consensus of opinion when I was at the water sewer meeting that I attended was that you guys need to come up with goals and objectives. And that's what this is, okay? I think that Mr. Pecos has put a lot of time into this. While he was down there working, he came up with a list, you know, of things that need to be done. I think that the water sewer board needs to agree on what needs to be done in what order, okay? And I think Rob's point on the sewer, you know, item number 2, that's a non-item. So, but that's what has to happen, yes, and that discussion has to take place.
And I think, you know, 2 given things is that, you know, obviously you need some sort of manpower down there to get things done.
And you have to decide what degree of manpower you need, you know, what, you know, is it, you know, to do certain tasks.
And working with, you know, people who know about that, set those goals and objectives. You guys are experts on this. I'm not, you know, you guys know about, you know, oversold capacities and billing issues and sewer regulations. That's why you're commissioners. So that's, you know, that's why we're saying it's important, you know, we're on board for this investment. You know, we care, like I said, we all care about the town. And I think we're all on the same page for this. We're looking at 2 sides of the same coin.
Very close. Yes.
Time to go home.
So has there become any, so is there any consensus?
Yeah, Rob and I would just sort of jog right here. How about we all take a stab at prioritizing or not prioritizing? You know, like Rob came up with a good point, you know, non-issue. Why don't we take a stab at prioritizing what we see on here and who we think should be doing this? Okay, and then either we can hand it in to Robin and have her tabulate it, or we can come back and meet again at another workshop. You know,
For you, and then send it back out and you can see it.
And I-
Can you also send us down what we can do as far as personnel, whether it's about hiring or restructuring or moving? Because obviously it's whether we hire the next person and they part of your union or they with us or clarify
I don't know
some.
what you mean.
We need manpower down there. So
You
either
want me
it's
to, like,
eliminating
the
some of the
water
ones we
sewer
have
system?
in hiring better or,
Well, you talked about a water sewer superintendent. I
Mhm.
think that that's been in the works. Have you now changed your mind on that?
no, we need somebody very qualified down there.
But if we're not gonna become a consecutive water supplier, then we don't need someone who is highly proficient water. We need someone who has some acquaintance with it, but we don't need a level 4 operator, is what we don't need.
You need a high-functioning manager down there,
Exactly.
though, because
Exactly.
there's a lot of oversight that needs to happen that hasn't been happening in your billing
Financial
system.
And we had a pitfall.
Operations.
Pitfall there with
Illegal area.
with the billing in the office.
But it's both. We had the high power and then there was still a lot of
That's-
stuff
yeah.
that got bogged down.
I hear you. Got
So, you get what I'm saying? So, we had high power, and stuff still got bogged down.
Right, well, it seems like stuff that got bogged down was unbogged out because of that high power.
Who do we have high power?
Wait, Kevin,
Kevin?
six months.
No, in water and sewer.
What? We just had Kevin for the last 6 months.
Right.
It took us 5 months to
I'm talking
hire a
about-
secretary.
Something about,
And the billing still is.
The billing took 6 months. And I'm not demoting you. What I'm saying is there's a lot of stuff.
Well,
yeah, but you were just
Can I
talking
say
about.
something?
Yeah.
Okay. I love talking.
Mr. McGrath?
One of the things I think happened is you had a lot of fires that you were putting out, and a lot of stuff that's on this list, was put to the side. I'm, like I said, my suggestion is maybe take it, prioritize it, put an idea down, who you think, without any names, consultant, whatever, who's gonna take care of it. Water and sewer board's gonna take care of it, consultant's gonna take care of it, administrator.
So we're gonna start wrapping up.
Full responsibility.
Was that?
Actually, if people are willing to do that and then send it to me, I'd suggest that you actually put a name in there, or who you'd like, and I'll put all those names in the block, and then you can figure out, when you come back together, there were people who thought this, or this person, here's the average for priorities, so if it's a 1, 2, or 3, you can put those down.
So we're
So
responsible
why wouldn't we
officials.
just have that conversation right now about the person? Because that person should be part of putting the priorities in order with us.
Okay,
But
here's,
otherwise, realistically, we're all gonna be
Here's
saying,
the person
priority,
kicked
priority,
out.
priority,
Can I say-
priority, and no one's priorities match. We're back to square one. We've gone in a big circle. We wasted all our damn time tonight.
Yeah.
We've wasted his time, her time, his time, and it's a joke. We need
Just
to,
kicked it down the road.
that's it. Make a decision. Now, who do we want to do this? And then take this list and let's make it happen. And let's have that person who's gonna do this start working with water and sewer or with us to prioritize. Because we're gonna go home. We're all gonna send this in, and it's gonna be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different answers for every single one of these. What a waste of time and a wasted exercise. Sorry, but you're wasting everyone's time. Mr. Gagner's gonna have different priorities than me. She's gonna tally it and go, great, nothing matches, back to square one. We need to make decisions of who's gonna be heading this up and have water sewer work with that person to make this into an actual prioritized document. I see you shaking your head. I hope you're shaking your head yes, I don't know.
I think part of it is that they had somebody down there and he did do work for them, okay? But I think that when I was at the water and sewer meeting, they said that they didn't have the goals and objectives in order, and that would influence who they had to do this, okay? And that's why I said, get your goals and objectives down, put down who's gonna be responsible for it, and then move on. And I think that that'd probably be the way to do it, and then come back and say, here's where we are.
And you could possibly get someone for a month to help you develop those goals, and after you develop those goals, and if it's clear that, hey, that person's not clear, you can move on.
Listen, I just don't want, I don't want to see us turn this evening into a wasted 3 hours, and like he said, we just kicked the can down the road, and now we're back to square one again.
Well, here's one thing that I was hoping that you would have a decision on. One is negotiating that land, because we've got in that agreement that Exxon needs to agree whether or not they're gonna pay it. We've got a pump station that needs to go there, and on that Casella piece, if we're able to get water down there, a water line, that has to be in place. And it has to be in place before we can go over 100,000 gallons and turn the rest of things on. That's a critical part.
That was discussed last night, Ron.
Who's doing it? Because
It
DEP's
was
asked
Kevin
me
and I,
who's
but
doing
now it's
it.
myself and it's either gonna be Paul or Gabe. That's that came in our first stop.
And when do you think you might have that? Because
Well,
that's an important piece.
Soon, our first stop is to go to see Debbie at the office and get her opinion.
So can we put that down here? Because that was
Sure,
one thing I
sure.
wanted
Mr.
to
Pink?
Because a lot-
know.
a
So
lot-
I have an
Just
answer
a-
for DEP.
Just a closing thought for you, because I don't think you need me for a resource anymore tonight. I hope the heck you're not here too much longer, folks.
Thanks.
But just a closing thought for you, based on my 7 months of working there for a lot of hours. The basic problem at the water sewer department right now is a lack of professional management. I mean, plain and
Exactly.
simple. I don't want to gild the lily. I want to tell you honestly what it is. Whether you hire me or you hire somebody, it really doesn't matter. What matters is that you hire an experienced person who's managed water sewer departments. And by the way, you do not have to be an operator to run a water sewer department. I've been doing it with great success for 40 years. What you have to have is somebody who's got a good understanding of finance and a good understanding of management. They can run that department very nicely. Don't have that now. Case in point, we fixed the billing file. It took a lot of time and an enormous amount of help from the selectman and town administrator's office. And while I can't take personal credit for it, I can take a piece of it, along with Mary and Steve and all the other folks who work on it. If you look at the billing for the quarter, it looks like, conservatively, we've increased your quarterly billing by somewhere between $80,000 and $100,000 by making that file accurate. Now, if that holds true, we just created $300,000 to $400,000 of new wealth for the sewer department that prior to fixing that file didn't exist. That's what professional management does for you, folks. As you said earlier, it spends some money, professional management, and you're going to do a lot better in the long run. There's an enormous amount of work that you got to get done down there. And I fear for you because I don't hear a consensus to hire professional management yet. Whether you go consecutive, you don't. There's an enormous amount of work that's got to get done. And I will tell you honestly that if you don't get a professional in there to start helping out run that department, there are some potential disasters hidden in that, not hidden, but speaking out from that list. And you've got to get on top of it, because kicking the can down the road week after week after week is not cutting the mustard, folks. I'm telling you right now, you're going to have a problem down here. The first thing you need to do is you need to get that financial analysis done. Hire an accountant. Hire
said
Mark
you had it
Abrams.
done.
Hire somebody else. I don't want to be the issue
We already
for
read
you.
the numbers.
But for
Why didn't
God's
we add
sake,
it in 6 months?
hire somebody, let them do a financial analysis for you, and then when you have it, decide if you want to go consecutive. You can't make a decision without having facts. So I hope I helped a little bit tonight, and I really do appreciate all that you guys do. It isn't an easy job being a public official these days. It really isn't. As Selectman McGrath said to Bob, you don't want to see sausage made in legislation, but on the other hand, I love watching it. I love watching it made. It's been my life for 4 decades. You're all good people. You got the right thing in mind. Good luck. If I can help you,
Thank you, Kevin.
I'll be standing by. Thanks, guys.
Can I add that you give us the updated information from Mr. Pecos, that his rate structure now is completely different, that we did not know about up until about 8 minutes ago?
And that's also very,
So,
can we get the updated information so that we can address this? The other thing is, I will personally take responsibility. I've been on this board on and off for the last 8-10 years. Kevin is absolutely right. We've had people in there probably a lot longer than we need to. And I'm sorry to say this in front of public words, but some changes are gonna have to be made down there because the hole's getting deeper and there is no professional management. I could not run my company this way. Nobody could do anything that way. And Kevin, on top of what's already there, is not gonna fix it. Kevin, along with there's some changes that have to be made. And I'm sorry I have to say this in front of public TV, but I need your help as far as personnel.
That's why, you know, we're here. We're here to provide that. That's our job.
This is not, you know, we understand that it's to try and run the place. The challenges that take place on a day-to-day and with only having, you know, one person down there and no administrative assistant, and then whatever time he had, we sucked up in doing what I call firefighting, okay? Everybody understands there's a need for a manager.
That's why we have Robin. Robin is there to make sure things run smoothly. Without her, we couldn't do it.
Yeah,
There's no
can I
way.
talk about the good news?
Yeah.
The good news is since 2007, we haven't increased the sewer rate down the
So we're
plant.
gonna-
Okay, we're still at 1.07 cents a gallon. The other good news is we probably have enough funds in retained earnings to operate our system for 1 year without any income.
So I'm losing my
And,
form.
Yeah, so I love you all, but I actually have to go to New Jersey. for
Good
work.
luck in Jersey. At
So-
least it's not snowing.
I'm driving. Yes, I gotta pack and go to New Jersey, so I really can't have this discussion any further.
Okay.
So,
So
again,
it's 9:20 and the Board of Selectmen closed their meeting.
Can I get a motion to adjourn? Can we, I think we all said no.
Yeah, motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay,
I
motion
haven't done with my good news.
You can
Good
still
news
do
week.
it.
Good.
You know, we're just taking a beating here, everyone thinks we got all these problems down here, is we have problems, yet in fact we come.
All right, we have a motion, second. Any discussion on the motion to adjourn? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Motion to adjourn, Mr. Chair. Paul?
Are you gonna keep talking?
Aye.
Because they can still finish the conversation,
Well done.
but you should stay in open session if you're gonna keep talking.
We just closed.
Done.
Okay,